Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Bensberger? Here. Jeffers?
Here.
Call?
Here.
Mayor Mingus?
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. This is the working session. It's titled Streets, Solid Waste, and Recycling. Of course, no formal business will be conducted. At this time, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Decker, who can make introductions.
Thank you, Mayor. This is probably a long time coming. We've been talking about quite a bit of potential changes to our solid waste and recycling program. We have a lot of ideas out there, and that's what this is. We're looking for feedback from the council tonight, many different things. We've talked about expanding our recycling, changing our solid waste a little bit. Talked about potential of recycling glass and looking at toters and cleanup week and everything else. So we can talk about any of that tonight, but I'll turn it over to Dennis, and he's got a program he'd like to go through, and then we'll chat more.
Thank you all for coming this evening. I've got about a dozen or so slides. You've got the packets in front of you on the same thing. So if there's any questions you guys got, feel free to interrupt. We'll do the best we can to field answers. Like I said, the biggest thing is we are looking for feedback and direction on what you guys think about this this possible scenario to change things up. So we'll dive right in with streets. Our main discussions on streets today are some of the things we're planning on doing for this spring and how things are going to roll for this year. We plan on trying to do some concrete street repairs ourselves, including some repairs, hopefully Pinecrest Road and or Highview Road and or Fairlane Drive. I've been working with Rick. He's been working with his street group to try to see if this is a possible process that we can take on in-house. It's fully within the wheelhouse and most of the equipment that we already have to be able to make these repairs ourselves internally. It helps free up some of the dollars to continue to repair the asphalt roads, which we do not have the means to be able to do in-house. So what we're looking at is the potential of $150,000 in increased additional funding from sales tax. I know that's a rough number. We're waiting to see, depending on what happens with that later, as well as the $100,000 in the budgeted street paving and resurfacing, and basically using those funds to be able to fund the concrete repairs that we intend to do in-house. Looking at some equipment here, some purchases, concrete dowel drill to be able to pin the concrete slabs together so they don't move around, as well as a concrete saw that we need. You see I kind of got some rental costs as well as purchase costs. You'll find out that some of those average around 10, 11, 12 weeks of rental, and we have one of those paid for. We fully believe we can be able to recoup our purchase price within a 2-year process at minimum. And maybe even faster than that, depending on how fast our guys can be able to go through this process and do it. We've already talked to them about staffing, how we want to staff this as light as we possibly can, to the point to try to get some efficiencies out of that, work on traffic control and things like that to be able to work on making some of these improvements. We all know a lot of these improvements are very high dollar repairs, so therefore by being able to do them in-house and make these patches, we might be able to get us through for a few years until we can actually reinvest into complete overhauls or whatever else we might need to do on those repairs. You have anything?
Just a quick question. As far as the tools, the saw, the dowel, et cetera, you mentioned it had like a 2-year payback, or depends how much we use them, of course, but we think this is the way to go. Just a basic question as far as the life of them. Their life is more than 2 years.
Correct.
Even if you use them for 2 years, we throw them away and start over, and we got our money out of them. But
the concrete saw that we currently have is not large enough to do a full depth concrete repair. Mm-hmm. That saw was there in excess of 20 years. We still have it, we still use it, so it's not like a 2-year and we throw it away. We just know that if we're going to do enough of these repairs in-house, that we believe the rental cost versus a purchase, if we purchase it, use it for minimum of 2 years, we've received our payback,
Yeah.
and then anything else we have after that is additional free usage as such. So
I got it.
You know, a couple of wear stuff on there, the blades and of course fuel and maintenance, but that's the minimal pieces of the equipment itself. It was kind of surprising to see what these costs come in at versus the rental rating to kind of get an idea. You know, like I said, and we're trying to do this to create an efficiency, to be able to get somebody out saw cutting everything we need to saw cut, keep that piece of equipment being used, bring that person back into part of the concrete crew and utilize them. So a lot of times where we have a rental piece of equipment that might get used for 4 or 5 days and then sit for 4 or 5 days, we wouldn't have to try to return it and then re-rent it. We would own that piece of equipment, so then therefore we'd be able to make better use of
Yep.
that, have it when we need it, not so much be worried about its availability when we go back to re-rent it. So the second slide kind of shows the proposed street projects that we have. This is utilizing the fall 2017 evaluations. Our streets are evaluated 2 different times a year, once in the fall, once in the spring. We have to approach paperwork process for utilizing MFT dollars. So these are the streets that have been identified through Rick Szymanski himself, as well as the foreman in the street department and Patrick Meyer, the engineer, we utilize for this to have all 3 done evaluations, and these are the top-rated streets that need the most improvement or need the most repair in the spring. Until we get bids back, we don't know, unfortunately, how far that $450,000 in MFT funding is going to spread. We'd hope that it'll pick up all of those. Until we have some actual prices to have an idea back, we can just kind of go that these are the worst rated that we have on our listing, the ones that need to be repaired first.
I'd like to reiterate that if you don't mind. These are basically what rates the lowest. To say that they're the most important ones to do, maybe not, but if you remember years back, we tried to take politics out of it, so you can't, one person couldn't argue for one street over another. So if you just look at our ratings, these are the ones that our triage system says that we're supposed to do.
So that's kind of an idea. So if, in case you guys get approached on any, have you heard if my street's going to get done? This is the preliminary list, not saying something can't be bumped off and bumped on or change up or even a priority if we have something at the bottom of the list that needs to be moved towards the top. Once we have some ideas of where the funding is going to come in, we can kind of narrow this list down to how far are we going to get down this list, how much of it are we going to
Yeah.
actually get done.
Well, and I think with the budget constraints that you've had, you're trying to take this as far, probably a lot of spray patch here, I would guess, and et cetera. It's not a complete rebuild of any of these. Maybe some have more than others.
Well, I'd like to mention, kind of on the lines of priority, obviously, Highview is a priority. A very rough stretch, and from Illini forward, we've got to do something with that. We're hoping that we'll be able to take care of that in-house with, and that's what we talked about with some of the other equipment. So I can't even, I don't think it's on here.
No,
but obviously that's something that we have to do. We have to do something with it this year. It just won't, it'll tear up cars if we let it go this whole year. So as he said a minute ago, this is a preliminary list, and obviously some input can be added into that.
Okay, so we'll jump into some solid waste. This piece is basically just for a discussionary piece, kind of a reiteration of what the ordinance currently says. It states in there that we can't have more than 3 toters or mandatory receptacles. So it kind of depends on how you read that as to what that means. If we're looking at trying to move towards a mandatory recycling toter system, does that take one of the 3 toters away that's allowed of citizens, or does it not? The way the current language is, you could kind of argue it either directions. It kind of mentions 3 toters or mandatory receptacles. If we turn around and want to try to go towards mandatory recycling, we have to consider the amount of garbage that we allow people to put out on a weekly basis and how much that affects our recycling. Obviously, if we provide a toter or they're able to utilize a toter program to be able to get a 95-gallon receptacle for their recycling and utilize that, that should hopefully take some of their solid waste away to where they're not having to put out 3 garbage cans. 3 garbage cans, a 95-gallon size, is a lot of garbage. And we have people that put out 3 or even more every week. Our guys now currently pick up 3, and they'll leave the 4th one sit there and tag it as you can't have this many toters. But 3 95-gallon garbage cans is a lot of garbage to be thrown away. And most of these places that are doing that don't have recycling toters that they're using or bins that they're using at all. So we need to try to get that focus towards recycling. So this was just kind of on here to discuss the ordinance itself, to see whether or not we need to look at that, changing that, to drop that number of 3 down to a number of 2 or a number of 1 to be able to try to encourage further recycling. Me and Rick have had a lot of conversations talking about recycling itself. a certain percentage of the population is going to recycle because it's the right thing to do. It's easy, it's good for the environment, it's good for the city. Some people are going to recycle if we make it as easy as we can. Other people aren't going to recycle at all unless you force them to have to recycle. I've used a lot of examples in the past here talking about a trip to New York City I took where everything they put is in clear garbage bags on the street. And your garbage bags do not get picked up if you don't separate your recyclables away from your garbage. They leave your garbage on the street, will not pick it up because you don't recycle. So I'm not proposing that we get to that point, but it's out there. There are large communities that are doing that on a routine basis. You put your recyclables in a clear container so they can see what's in there. You put your garbage in a clear container so they can see what's in there. And if you commingle, they won't pick up your stuff. So it's not beyond the realm that we can really push recycling farther ahead. Our current numbers by weight, we're only recycling about 8.5% of the refuse that we're actually getting rid of by weight. We all know that paper and plastics and cardboard doesn't have as much weight as glass and some of the other things that get thrown into the garbage, but we need to get that 8.5% number up. We all know what the costs are involved in the tipping fees alone just to go from garbage to recycling. There's a large enough incentive that we really need to encourage recycling at all levels to be able to bring those numbers up. Which will kind of help get to the next piece of where we're going to, which is a cleanup week discussion and then a recycling discussion. So the cleanup week, what we're kind of proposing at this point in time is we move to one annual cleanup per year. And we move that to a late fall process, whether that's August or September or any other date somebody wants to propose, we're open with that. We want to propose to be able to begin collecting the brush ourselves. So like if we have a lighter week, we'll go around during that same week. We'll put brush out just like we do, but instead of paying a contractor to come around and collect that brush and dispose of it, we'd like to do that in-house because we believe there's a cost savings there. We all know that's somewhere around $10,000 or $12,000 for each cleanup to be able to pick up just the lawn waste piece of it. By us doing it ourselves, we believe we can do that and dispose of it for cheaper than $10,000 or $12,000. We don't have to have the entire crew to be able to do that. We can do that with just a couple of trucks and a couple of people. Generally, it's not a huge, large quantity that you're picking up anyway. It's a handful of bags from some people, and sometimes it's just a couple of trees that somebody's trimmed or taken down and bunched up, so.
We have with our backhoes, we have the clam bucket attachment, correct? So that makes it easier for us to just.
Exactly.
Move-
It's just a
move
matter of
pretty well.
whether we can utilize that equipment for 2 weeks straight or whether we have to be doing them by hand, but either direction, we believe we can do it cheaper than hiring it out, because when you hire it out, you're basically paying a set contract price, and it doesn't matter if it's bunches or if there's none. The contractor is getting the same kind of price tag coming back to you, so it's just an opportunity for us to maybe try to hone in some of those costs and keep those in a little closer to where we need to be able to continue doing this. We do believe that cleanup week has a value. We understand that people are going to get rid of this stuff, whether we offer the service of a cleanup week, whether we offer a service to be able to pick it up, whether we offer a service to dump it. We all understand you buy a couch, it's hard to get rid of the old couch. If your couch is nice, you might be able to give it to somebody and it might be able to get filtered down, but ultimately somebody's going to get rid of a couch somewhere. And we need to kind of have some idea how we can be able to do that. So we're just trying to see if there's a way we can do this more efficient. A good example, I took this picture myself that's on here that shows the line of trucks that was taken in the cleanup week of last spring. I obviously was in the back truck of the line as we started out that morning. It's a lot of use of manpower and equipment to be able to do a cleanup week. And it shuts down Public Works completely for a whole entire week of all other work that gets done out of the street department. That means there's not stop signs getting fixed, there's not mailbox getting fixed, there's not a lot of anything else getting done other than cleanup week. So this is a big situation. It has gotten better. There have been years past where it's cleanup week has turned into cleanup 2 weeks, where it's taken 2 full weeks to get everything done. So we've seen it improve. I can tell you we get flooded with calls asking when cleanup week is, so we know it's something that the people want. We just have to try to figure out how to manage it better, if at all possible.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dennis, I agree, cleanup week is a great service to the community, and one of the things we've talked about through the budget process is the need to change the way we do business where it makes sense. And have we considered alternatives with cleanup week rather than, as you say, basically shutting down the street department for a week or week and a half or whatever it may be? Have we considered a citizen drop-off program where perhaps we put dumpsters out at various points in the city, and it's not as convenient, but it's up to the citizen perhaps to transport the materials to the drop-off site, or perhaps pick up by appointment on lesser use of city staff on slower days or whatever, so they could be scheduled. So, okay, you have something, you have a couch and this and that needs picked up. We can schedule you on this week and we'll pick it up on Wednesday. Those sorts of alternatives that basically don't shut the department down for.
Right, we've looked at a couple of different things. I actually talked with the city engineer from Pekin. Now Pekin, I lived there, of course, 24 years. For 24 years, I watched them do a remote Saturday cleanup day in the spring and in the fall where everybody brings their stuff to a central location. They've now switched and they're now doing curbside pickup stuff. So I kind of asked him, I said, why the change? This has got me intrigued because I come here and the first thing I think is we should be doing exactly that process. Why are we changing? And their answer was, it's just the difference in the leadership and the direction that the current city manager wants to do it as opposed to the previous city manager. One of the issues with a Saturday cleanup would be, we collect that stuff on a Saturday, we can't get rid of it on Saturday. The transfer station is not open for us to be able to take dump trucks and garbage trucks full of items. So we have to store all of that stuff for the Saturday, the Sunday, and then still have to cart it all out come Monday morning, whether we do it in large dumpsters, whether we do it utilizing our current garbage trucks. No matter what we end up trying to do, we still end up having to hold on to all that stuff until Monday morning or Tuesday or Wednesday or however long it takes to get rid of. So there's a little bit there. I'm not saying it's not something to further question. I fully like the idea of a drop-off. The concern is when there's not somebody there to man it, when it's not somebody there to be able to lock it down, you'll have people coming from everywhere dropping stuff off.
And you'll get electronics and inappropriate material.
We collect our share of TVs, we collect our share of tires from Public Works, we collect our share of couches that show up randomly at our office, then just get dumped in a pile and we have to get rid of those. So I understand that, I think it could be tried to be configured that way. The question would be, how do you juggle your manpower? Do you say, okay, every Friday we're going to pick these up and we're going to take one crew and we're going to take 8 appointments, and then, so when somebody calls and you buy a new mattress set and you call and say, I need to get rid of my old mattresses, and we say, okay, well, we can't do it this Friday because it's already full, how about next Friday? That people might not want to have to keep that stuff for 2 weeks to try to wait to get rid of it on a demand system. They're going to want prompt service to be able to come get it. And I don't know that we can offer it. I don't know that it's against us offering it. I just don't know logistically how exactly it works. Pekin can do it in some of the ways they do it because they use rear load trucks. Rear load truck, one person can throw half a couch in there and let the truck crunch it up and suck it in basically and compact it. We don't have that ability with our current vehicle, so we're required to try to move this stuff, mattresses, couches. We're trying to do it with tractors and tandem dump trucks because it's the only equipment we have left to be able to do them. So it's not the best equipment for doing that kind of stuff.
There was a story in the Journal-Star, I don't know, it's probably been a couple months ago. Eureka did just the opposite. They did what we have always done and got so frustrated with, basically, they felt like cleaning up the entire county, which, let's face it, it happens to us, that they went to a drop-off, a monitored drop-off, and you show your address, and then you can drop it off, and I think we need to examine alternatives, and this may be the best one, but I think we need to make sure that it is the best one.
There's a couple things that I've obviously had this conversation now for many years, and whenever I talk about that, the idea of drop-off, you bring your stuff to a location, the concern I hear from people is, well, I have no way to get it there. I've got a couple concerns with changing cleanup week the way that it is. I'm willing to go to see how one a year does, because I think it's the right thing to do, to look at any cost-saving measures we can. However, one big concern I have is I like the idea of appointment. In fact, I think the people of East Peoria would like the idea of an appointment, because if you as a resident can say, well, shoot, they'll pick up my stuff whenever I want, I just have to call them, let them know, instead of it's scheduled during this week or this week, if those weeks aren't conducive to your schedule. The problem with that is, maybe it's a little selfish on my part, but I like to see the people who go through town and are able to utilize the things that people set out, whether it's for recycling. They find things that people set out and can use for themselves. So I think there are a lot of things that people set out that don't make it into the landfill, because we have scrappers or whatever go throughout the community and pick it up. Now, there might be a way to do that if the scrappers knew that, they do their appointments on Friday or something like that. So that might be an alternative. It's certainly something I've thought about, because it gives people more flexibility. But I do have my concerns. I guess all in all, even if we went away from cleanup weeks tomorrow, I don't see our costs decreasing, because people are still going to throw away what they're going to throw away. Over the last few months, I've really talked to people quite a bit, and I've heard stories of people taking Sawzalls to couches and putting them piece by piece into their toters. So those items still will make it into our landfill. The tipping fees, I'm afraid, won't go down throughout the year. They'll just be more spread out. And I like the idea of allowing people to come pick them up within given hours. That's caused its own problems as well, as people walk up into residences' yards at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And that is a big problem, big concern of mine. So, Commissioner, I think we should continue to look at alternatives. I think this year there was a push for, hey, we've got to change it. Me personally, everybody knows how I feel. I like cleanup weeks the way they are. I remember when I was a kid, cleanup weeks were started, or at least a big push. I'm not sure when they were started. And I remember my neighborhood, the street that I lived on, cleaned out the gullies and took everything to the front. And Jim Bavard lived across the street from me. And he and a couple people from the neighborhood were dragging things out of the gullies. And that's how, cleanup week in East Peoria really worked to clean up our area. So I like that. I have concerns that if we go away from it, those gullies can become full again. I think people are better nowadays than maybe they used to be of throwing stuff into gullies, but it still is a concern of mine. I was driving on through the back way, Farmdale, a few days ago, and on the side of the road, in a matter of like 2 blocks, I saw a small refrigerator sitting on the side of the road. I saw a mattress sitting on the side of the road, and unfortunately, there are people out there that will get rid of their stuff one way or another. So, whereas I have my concerns with reducing it at all, I'm certainly in favor of trying anything to reduce the cost to the city. If there's a way we can do an appointment that might even be better for the residents, I'm certainly in favor of that as well. So it's an open discussion, and I certainly don't mind continuing to have it.
Question. We've been all over the spectrum as far as the cost of junk day. What is the actual cost in this?
The true cost of cleanup week gets confusing, and I'll be honest with you, it gets confusing due to what I term municipal math. I know that my 2 commissioners hear me use that all the time, because we consider that, well, the labor is a sunk cost, we're going to have it whether we do it or not, so by doing it in-house, the labor doesn't necessarily count. So if you want to know the true cost of junk week, that would be me calling a contractor to say, drive around, pick everything up, haul it all off, and charge me for it. True cost of junk week, from what we've figured out, is somewhere around, was it total for 2 junk weeks, around $70,000. Now, that's utilizing manpower, vehicles, that's, you start adding up all that equipment. If I just call a contractor and say, come in and do this for me, what do I expect to have to pay them? I get the fact that we, do our in-house labor, and you can kind of pull that out, and we have the equipment, so we pull that out, and once we start segregating all those pieces, the dollar figure that's in cleanup week budget is $30,000.
That
which
costs-
covers the cost of the tipping fees only. So,
So if we stop tomorrow, the budget would go down about $30,000.
and actually, the budget that we presented did not have a cleanup week in it at all. So part of this process we have to do over the next couple weeks is figure out what can we do? What can we put in? Because that's one of the things I cut completely out of the budget, 100%. Now, I can tell you, we're spending a lot of time answering those questions right now. When's cleanup week? When's it going to be available? When will you know? I'm sure we'll be flooded with phone calls for the next couple weeks because we're kind of waiting to see what direction anybody wants us to head. I don't know that one per year is the right answer. I know stopping them, I'm afraid, is not the right answer. I'm afraid that's the wrong answer without some idea in place of how to go forward. So my idea is we start with one, and then we try to continue to work forward to say, okay, now what are we going to do next year? Are we going to continue with just one a year, or are we going to do some other form of being, whether it's appointments, whether it's drop-off locations? It's just too much to try to pull together and throw in and say, here's what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to solve the world's problems. I'm afraid that stopping them is not going to solve the problems. I agree. I think we're going to end up chasing more of the stuff in the ravines and the gullies, and we're going to end up picking up a lot of stuff. We're going to have a lot of stuff that's just left on the curb for days, waiting on somebody to pick it up, whether it's a junk man or whether it's just somebody else, so.
Is it a fair estimate then that when you look at all costs, benefits, it's about $75,000?
That would be the number. If you were to ask me what could we farm that out to have somebody else come to do it, I'm going to say that's probably going to be in that price range for somebody to come in and handle all of that for 2 times a year.
Just personally, I don't think there's anybody sitting up here that's opposed to cleanup week and the benefit of having it. Here's the position I'm taking, and it's not popular. It's kind of where I feel the city's at. It is a benefit. It's a benefit to X amount of citizens that expect it and use it. Don't deny that it solves some of the issues with those that, like Commissioner Decker said, without it, would probably put their stuff curbside and expect it to be someone else's problem. My whole issue is where we're at as a city, what we're preparing to face in the very next meeting here at 6 p.m., which is asking the taxpayers to dole out more money. So I go back into what's a necessity. We've gone through this exercise for the last year, and the staff's done a commendable job, and I get it. A lot of decisions that were made over the course of the last year changed the way the city's done business. Some of it hasn't been popular. That's where we're at. Now, to me, $30,000, you could sit there and say it's not going to fix much, but that's $30,000 we could put towards streets. $30,000 for a cleanup isn't fixing one street extra, period. To me, it comes into necessities. That's why when Mr. Eater and I had this discussion about this, it's not that I'm anti-cleanup week. This is where we're at as a city, and we've got to change the way we do business. Some of it's not going to be popular, but to me, I would much rather see these funds go into things that people are expecting when they pay their taxes. And I know Commissioner Decker, and I'm going to bring up the Richland area, and I thought I was pretty successful, where we went and placed a dumpster, I think a couple times a year, maybe it was once a year down there, where you had a host of volunteers that went through the neighborhoods, and then they carted the stuff to the dumpsters. So I'm more in line with what Commissioner Densberger recommended, just to try it. If it doesn't work, or we're in a better position a year or two down the road, let's have a different conversation. But to me, I think as a city, we're not doing our due diligence by spending the money where it needs to be spent, which is a necessity. That's just
The problem is, Commissioner, that cost doesn't go away. To say that we can save $30,000 if we don't do a cleanup week, I don't agree. Because those things that I have, I'm still going to throw away. I'm just not going to throw them away during that week. And not only, in fact, I'm concerned that our costs will be more. Because during those weeks, the scrappers come by and they pick up a lot of those things. So if we no longer have cleanup weeks and you still have a certain amount of items that you want to get rid of this year, our toters are large. I mean, I've got Sawzalls, I've got chainsaws. I can make a lot of things fit into a toter, and I think that's what a lot of people would do. So I'm concerned that to say that, well, I'd rather spend that $30,000 someplace else, I don't think that would happen. I think that over the course of the year, we will see their tipping fees would remain the same. I'm not saying I'm right, I'm saying that's what I believe.
And I
Because-
get it, I mean, I understand your concerns, I just feel like we're in a different reality right now than what we've been accustomed to in the past.
Well,
We've got to look at everything. You brought up the scrappers, you know, what's to say if you place a dumpster and you have the date set out, they're not going to go down there and pick out stuff that are placed in the dumpsters? You know, to answer how it works when somebody has something to dispose of, I'll tell you what I did. I had ceramic tile, about 700 square feet of it. I don't have a truck. I didn't feel it was the city's responsibility for me to be dumping it in my toter every week, so I borrowed a friend's truck, took it out to landfill, paid the tipping fee myself, and got rid of it. That's how it works.
You know,
People
the-
are so accustomed to us doing it for them, that mentality's got to change.
You know, actually, even if we change the model of cleanup week, the tipping fees are constant. Either way, you have tipping fees. The difference is that, for instance, the first thing you talked about is having the street guys take on actual street repair projects. This frees them up to do that work rather than spending a week or 2 weeks picking up, you know, doing cleanup weeks. That's the difference. And I think that's what's important here, is that if we can put that effort into the streets and provide the same service, albeit far less convenient to the resident.
I think one of the hugest pieces is communication, though, too. Like I said, for as many times as we're answering the phone right now, wanting to know when spring cleanup week is, we have to have some time to be able to communicate this to people. I kid you not, we are getting between 5 and 10 phone calls a day at Public Works asking, when is spring cleanup week?
You know,
Oh, sure.
and that's something that's very important. I do want him to get to recycling. I think that's the most important part of our talk tonight. But we can continue this conversation. But one thing I want y'all to think about, I've dealt with this for a long time now, and I know how important it is to the community. It's not a few people. The people of East Peoria want there to be cleanup week. I received an angry email today that I'll show all of you if you want to see it, because he asked me if I would share it with you. But an angry email today at the notion of reducing to 1. And what he brought up is, listen, I pay my taxes. This is something that I pay for. And to think that, well, this is just something that we provide, it's something that the city has chosen to do. So I think it is a very popular service that I personally don't feel is right to stop it. So what I've said before, if it's something that y'all want to stop, it's not something that I'm going to agree with.
I don't think stop, but to look for the alternatives, and I have many organizations call and want to volunteer, and I'm sure that we could get people to go out to pick things up in trucks. But there are priorities,
Well-
and we don't have a garbage fee, and I think we just need to look at the alternatives, and we're going to have to do it pretty quickly because time is ticking.
May I have a comment?
Absolutely.
Or offer a comment. Annually, I think we still do this. I know I've participated in the past. We have an annual clean sweep, usually springtime, I think. And that's where neighborhood people can volunteer, come out and take an area that's assigned to them, and they clean up trash, basically, and so forth, manually. And it works pretty well. And, that's a healthy thing for a community to do, or have people, you see some at towns, clubs take care of this stretch of road, and Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, this club, name your clubs. I really think going from 2 to 1, if we're going to go down to 0, I think the path would be 2 to 1 and see how it works and gauge how it all works. In the meantime, there could be a combination of pickup week and a destination place to bring things in, and just it may evolve to that. I don't know. I know in different areas of the country, even around here, counties have a drop-off place like you described, Dennis. We've talked about it, and I had a chuckle at one sign that says, "No dead animals and no live animals brought and dropped off." And in a farming community, that can be quite a thing to have both dropped off. But anyway, I see that as wisdom to ease down. We've been very careful in other areas of the city to not, can I say, offend, or the things that people expect. I mean, we need to wean ourselves off of some things perhaps, and this may be one of those things that it's a step process. I think the intent is good, that we try and save money, but at the same time, can we maintain a service that's been there, that people expect? Now, do I participate every time there's a cleanup week? No, because I don't have that need. I don't know if the city still does. It used to. We used to pick up, say, a water heater. That simple, that item, we can come pick it up. I don't think we do it anymore. But something like that, there's those kind of items that are a routine, not the most handy thing to throw in your, you can do it, but it's something that like Pekin's picking up. So maybe there's a list of some things we could pick up on these larger items, but as far as these cumulative things, people have home businesses sometimes, and that's where it gets you weekly. They just fill up those toters and.
There's a lot of alternatives already available too. You go buy a new appliance, the first thing they offer is, well, can we take your old appliance? We'll do it for free, or we'll do it for a nominal charge. Nobody wants to spend, you're buying I just personally bought a new refrigerator. Buy a new refrigerator. Their first question at Lowe's was, will we be disposing of one for you? We charge you $25. Do you want us to go ahead and put you down for that or not? Yes or no?
Man, you got screwed.
Yeah.
I just paid him 15 back in December.
Well, either way, there's an alternative available. Some people choose to utilize it and some people don't. But, some people have to realize too, if we're not offering the free service, they may have to utilize that. You buy a new couch, you may have to trade in your old couch to be able to get rid of it. Otherwise, you may be stuck in the garage with a Sawzall trying to figure out how to get rid of it if we're not offering something. The biggest concern I have with the central location is, how do we secure it? During the day, 7 to 3:30, Monday through Friday, not a problem. It's what happens at 6 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. Are we going to have somebody there? We're going to have cameras, we're going to have security, we're going to have gates. Then even if we have something that's open 7 to 3:30, how many of the general public are going to be able to secure a truck and get it to our facility between 7 and 3:30, Monday through Friday, without having to take a day off work to dispose of this couch?
Yeah. I'll be honest,
So I get the needs of all different directions.
One thing I want to say before we jump off this, and the Commissioner Densberger's thought of, and we've all talked about it before, about the plan, like each person is allowed a cleanup. I actually love that idea. I love it. Because it would give freedom of people to be able to do it on their schedule. I think people in East Peoria would like that, because those weeks may not fit in. It would just be a matter of getting to the point of figuring out how to do that. And we could still do it in such a way that would allow scrappers to come through. It might be a win-win for all around. So I do love that idea. Not sure how to do it, but I do like that idea.
Just one, I know you want to move along, but just one thing I know we have talked about, the fact that we do have the transfer station here in East Peoria, and that's been a big deal for us to keep our tipping fees even lower than most towns around here for the landfill. But would it be possible, and we've talked about this, for East Peoria residents to take their load to the transfer station and dispose of it, and maybe our price is different than the guy that's outside East Peoria because of our negotiating and our et cetera. So that's something I know we've talked about.
I think we talked about it with them. Unfortunately, they would like to stay as much commercial traffic only as they can.
Oh, yeah.
And when you start getting a bunch of people showing up with a pickup truck with a couch in it, it really is going to create a mess for them to have to deal with too.
Yeah.
And I get it. I mean, sometimes you have to do that, but when you try to do that scenario, there's logistic pieces with that, and I don't
That's
know
where
that
it
they
paid for
would
us
be.
to have a roll-off type situation, and they truck the whole
Exactly.
big piece up there. Okay.
I think
The recycling is the really neat part about tonight, something I think we're all
better get moving
excited about, so.
Oh, yeah, we can get this done. I've got a lot of information in your packet. I'm going to kind of go through the process itself. of what we plan on doing or how we plan on doing it. And then I can go through the communications piece. One of the whole process of recycling and improving our recycling is based on a couple concepts. The first concept is to get away from the current small 18-gallon bins that we're using and go to a 95-gallon toter for recycling. The second piece of it is to go to bi-monthly or every other week recycling. So instead of having 36 gallons, two 18-gallon bins to hold your recycling, you have 95 gallons to now hold your recycling for 2 weeks. Recycling is generally clean products. It's dealing with clean bottles. It's going to be clean plastic bottles, clean milk jugs, cardboard, paper, things like that, that don't necessarily smell or have an odor to them. So we believe this process does help us in our logistical process. It reduces a body in that department. We go from 4 bodies to 3. We utilize that body in the street department where we currently have a vacancy, so it's not like we get rid of any people, but through a process change, we better utilize our personnel. So we only have 3 people in the solid waste department, 2 running garbage, 1 running recycling. So some of the things we have to communicate across the board is removing the lids from our current bins. The current garbage truck that I plan on buying this spring is going to be what they call a Corrado can truck. It's a truck that holds the dumpster on the front, and the arm will pick up and empty bins and toters both. So we need to get the lids off of those containers so we can continue to recycle and move forward with those. Implementing the wheeled cart option for purchase by the public, we've been working on that one already. Moving department, of course, to every other week effective July 9th. We're trying to get enough time that we can communicate this out to people to let them know, but this is a pretty quick process. For half the people, basically the week of July 9th would come, they would not be putting their recycling out that week. They would hold it till the next following week. Utilizing the current bins or utilizing the toters that we hope to have by that point in time. So the next piece is converting the current routes into A and B. That's simply a process. We have 2 separate trucks. We already know A and B. It's pretty easy to distinguish between which route is on, put out a calendar. Everybody should be able to follow the calendar. You're an A route or a B route, you know which route, which day you take out your recycling. Most of the other areas around us are doing bi-monthly or every other week recycling. So it's not anything different than what the other communities are out there doing. We hope to utilize the green team. I've met with Bob, and we hope to utilize them to help them try to help us push this effort out there even farther. We want to utilize the farmers market to promote the recycling as well as get the wheeled cart out there for people to see and get it for people to understand what our changes are going to be and how they're going to affect how they move forward. Creating this East Peoria Recycling Champion Group. This is basically the people that want to start right now and say, look, I'm all in, sell me my toter, deliver it to me as soon as you get it, and start signing up, as soon as we make this available to the public. It's going to be a sticker that goes on the front. It's going to denote them as an East Peoria Recycling Champion. Lets them know that, they're here in the community, they're supporting recycling, they're supporting what the city does to be able to do their processes. Communicate, promote recycling whenever and wherever. I've already talked to my entire department and to explain to them, I expect them to communicate recycling anywhere, anytime, all the time, including going to schools, including going to some of these other functions. That is what it is. People have to be able to get on board with recycling and starting to get this done. This is a money saver for the city, and overall, it's important. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We need to communicate this program using every means we have possible. We have a texting program. We have internet messages. We have social media, postcards. We plan on trying to get this out to everybody as fast as we can so that people understand on this July 9th week date that they're not only half the people are going to be recycling that week, and we're going to get into that process. That also comes with the final caveat, which is putting in a mandatory recycling wheeled cart date of July 1st, 2019. So that gets people about 14, 15 months to purchase a toter and be ready for mandatory toter-only style recycling. So as of July 1st, 2019, we won't be picking up those bins any longer. We'll only pick up
Just
toters.
a real quick question, your very first line item here, communicate lid removal. Did you mention that? Or what is that about?
The lids that are on the bins right now, I think I mentioned it as Commissioner Densberger was leaving.
Okay.
The current new garbage can, they tell me will be able to pick up these bins without our driver exiting the vehicle. But if they pick up the bin and the lid's on it, the lid's going to end up in the recycle bin and it's going to be gone. So we need to communicate to people, keep the lids, put them in your garage, keep stuff,
Okay.
carry it, use it, do what you're going to do, just
Here's
don't
the
put
way
it
I
at the
read it. I
curb.
thought,
So
man, those little red ones, I know people that put their stuff out now that pack them too high, and that stuff just blows
Yeah.
everywhere.
The
So I
whole
thought,
desire is to
dude,
get to a wheeled
Yeah.
cart with a lid. So that's the real answer to it, is come buy a cart. That's going to solve those problems. As to whether I can get everybody to do that is,
There,
as soon as I can push,
as we
as
can
soon
get
as
more
we get a
here.
budget and I can push an agenda memo through to begin the first purchase. I already have it written up, sitting on my book.
There are a couple things with this, Mayor. First of all, I think everybody has had a concern if we mention every other week recycling. There have been concerns out there. I think the concerns are we can overcome those, though. For me, the biggest thing will be remembering when it is. And he talked about putting out a calendar, and I think that's a smart way to do it. The truth is, the little red bins that we use now, they don't compare to the size of the toters. So if you're looking at just quantity of items every other week, if you compare the bins to the toters, it's fine. We'll have plenty of room. But you don't just have to have one toter. You can have multiple toters as well. You can have as many recycling toters as you want. And one thing he mentioned, people will have until that time, not necessarily to purchase, but to have a toter. You could take the toter you have now. I've got two. So my plan is to take one of them and paint the lid with the type of spray paint that will stick to plastic and bind to it. And so it will be blue, and so we'll know that's the recycling toter. There is a little bit of concern with going to every other week recycling, but I think we can overcome that. I'll tell you the truth. We spend a lot of money in tipping fees. The more we can recycle, the more money we will save, because it is more expensive to get those items through the landfill than it is to recycle them. So the bigger we can make this program, the more cost savings it's going to be for the city. It would be nice, as he said a few minutes ago, would you say 8% of the community recycles?
8.5 is what ours by weight.
Wouldn't it be great if a few years from now it flips? I mean, most of the things people throw away, unfortunately, can be recycled. Many of the things, I'll say. People throw away things all the time. I think that's been one of the biggest challenges with the bins. There's just not enough room in those things. And I'm hopeful with the toters, it'll be plenty of room and people can not have to be shy about putting things in there.
It's Christmas time.
Yeah, yes, they are. Yes.
The next slide here kind of gives you a picture of what that new solid waste vehicle or the new recycling vehicle will look like. The concept is there's an arm on the front of it, so this still allows us to manually load boxes and bins if we have to, so that we can have a transition as we begin to go to this process, because unfortunately we can't just flip the switch and say tomorrow we're going to use toters only. We still kind of have to have a process for people to work through. And it shows on here, purchase approximately 3,120, such a nice round, even number, which is basically based off of how many you could get in a semi and how many semi-loads do I think is appropriate, how many toter bins have we given away, how many people are currently participating. The other day I did a number based on the last 10 years. We've given away around 7,000 of those little bins at a cost of about $15 to $16 a piece with the lids, to a total of 3,200 households. So just taking that 3,200 households, those are the people we know have come down to get bins. Don't know if they're using them for whatever, but that's the people that have collected bins. This process kind of gives us a starting point to at least, hey, make the first purchase, let's get these out there, let's start communicating this, let's be ready to be able to handle it. I got to be able to have enough to be able to sell them, to be able to move forward with it. The next page will show you the toter that I'm recommending. It does stamped on the side of it with the East Peoria logo on both sides of it, as well as a recycling message on the lid. This does meet all of our standards, actually exceeds most of our standards. This is a little better cart than some of the other ones that we've had out there. You see there's a little note on there that says allow citizens to paint the lid of the current cart. So if somebody does have 2 carts or 3 carts, then they can go and paint the lid. I've already picked up several cans of paint. I'm finding out that the paint I was telling Commissioner Decker about, they've pretty much gotten rid of it, because what they've done is your standard can of paint now bonds to the plastic. So they've just changed the way their current paint matches. So your Krylon and your DuPont, your Duracolors and whatever else, will all tell you right on the can that they'll adhere to plastic. So it's one of those, if somebody wants to reuse a bin they already have, repurpose a bin that they already have, they have that ability to be able to do that without any additional cost.
$5, they're done.
Yeah, at $4 and under $4 for a can of spray paint, so.
Those carts that we sell will have serial numbers on them,
Correct.
right? So obviously, if there are people out there that don't want to purchase one, the one you purchase will have a serial number on it, so.
Okay, so the final page is just kind of going through some of the big pluses that I see, improvements in recycling that the program's going to change. Number one is reducing potential work comp injuries. Knock on wood, we haven't had any huge issues with climbing on and off the truck, but the gentlemen that climb in and out of these trucks daily, jumping off the truck, grumping out, grabbing a couple bins, flipping the lids off of them, dumping this stuff in the truck, putting the bins back, trying to do all their pieces. This is going to automate that process to kind of go just like the garbage trucks. I mean, I hate to say it, it's almost like a video game watching these guys man these trucks. They're driving these trucks and they're using hand controls inside the trucks to be able to pick up the toters. So this is going to move us to a fully automated system. So we already do that with garbage. This is just bringing recycling on board. The wheeled cart allows for the additional volume. Like I said, 95 gallon lasting 2 weeks compared to the 36 gallon that we're doing right now for a 1 week process. So, and as well as the unlimited number of bins to be able to push this. Our new truck will be compacting. As much as that doesn't sound like a deal, our current 2 recycling trucks, one of which is currently out of service even, doesn't compact. So we run out of volume. We fill up the truck because we can't smash the stuff that's in it. We can't smash the cardboards and plastics, whatever. These trucks will allow that to compact. So we truthfully believe we can see some efficiencies, because instead of having to run to the transfer station sometimes twice a day, and some of our routes, each truck has to go twice a day for the recycling truck just because of volume, this will be able to crush, and we really believe that the possibility might be every other, every third, every fourth day before they actually have to go get rid of a full load of recyclables, because you actually can compact those and get them in the truck. And that becomes important. I mean, that's time that these guys are actually working and not driving, sitting in line, waiting to get rid of the recyclables and then get back down to wherever they're supposed to be to continue. Of course, going from 4 people to 3 people, we all understand how that process works. Anytime you start talking about labor reduction, I mean, this is a natural labor reduction without anybody losing a position. It's just changing the process and the way we do it. And then the mandatory recycling date. And one of the hugest pieces that I guess I forgot to add to this is glass. Glass is a recyclable that we can take, and the bins get overloaded when you fill them full of glass. And unfortunately, Commissioner Densberger won't be here to hear this part of it, but the toters will allow us to put glass in those recycling containers. It allows it easily to be able to use, to be able to be wheeled to the street. Even if you filled it completely full of glass, you'd still be able to wheel it to the street, and we'd be able to utilize it. At the same time, it's gonna help get that weight out of garbage and into recycling. So I believe that's going to be yet another bonus to what we're gonna get. We automatically know we're going to increase the weight of the amount of the recyclables, because we're adding glass from taking it away from solid waste and moving it into recycling.
I know that we're pushed for time at 6. I want to make sure the audience has a chance to weigh in. Are there any more comments? You okay with?
I'm good.
Yeah. Audience, anybody want to come forward and speak regarding this matter?
Hi, Diane.
First of all, I'm with the East Peoria Green Team, so I have to thank you for even considering this. This is something we have been fighting for, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
My question is, I'm a single person, so I don't believe that the 95 gallon is something I would actually utilize. I don't even have a 95 gallon toter for garbage. So can we utilize the smaller ones, like the smaller toter I have for recycling, or is it strictly the 95?
We can utilize the smaller size. We just have found over the years, we used to offer all three sizes, and we found that our trucks don't like the smaller sizes.
Okay.
When it picks up the small ones in the regular can, when it gets the can upside down, half the time the small can falls out, lands inside. We can't get it back out. It's hard for us to do. So the reason for, we will just be offering the 95s. If somebody has a current 65 or a 35 that they want to repurpose, by all means.
Okay.
The other piece of it is just get it as big as we possibly can so people will utilize it.
Good question, though. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I got
Just
a
cut on
question
done.
on this pickup days. You can just drive around town anytime after the pickup days is over. 2 days later, you got couches, you got washing machines. Of course, washing machines the junkers get and whatever, but how you gonna deal with that? I mean, you don't deal with it now, so how do you intend to deal with it in the future? After the last pickup days we had down there in the ghetto where I live, 2 or 3 days later, there was couches sitting all over hell, you know. And I understand you're wanting to save a few bucks. That's good. I'm not opposed to that. But I mean, how are you gonna deal with this? Because if you ain't gonna pick them up, and you ain't gonna take them off, okay? And I don't know, somebody said something, somebody was burning one somewhere at one time, at one of the meetings, okay?
I think the easy answer,
And the next year, you're gonna have 2 of them sitting out there, and on and on and on. I mean, how you gonna deal with it?
I think, Bob, the easy answer is that if they're out there on junk day, pickup day, they should be picked up.
If they're out appropriately at pickup day and the pile doesn't exceed what they need to be doing, they have it out on
Shouldn't
time,
be
it should
sitting
be
there.
picked up.
Yeah, but how about after pickup days, then they haul them out? Oh,
Well-
pickup days was the other day. Well, I'm gonna go get a new couch, and there's the old one.
That'll
I would
work.
think that would be utilized through the ordinance department, and those people would be out of a compliance for being able to put that equipment on the,
It's what code enforcement's for.
That's
is what
right.
he's saying.
unfortunately, that's the way I think it would end up going, is if somebody doesn't collect it in a couple of days because it's better than what they have, then we would have to rely on code enforcement to be able to make
Okay?
them do
Then
something.
code enforcement writes them a ticket. They rent, okay? I ain't gonna pay this damn thing. They just get in their car and go rent another house and move off. You still got the problem. We haven't come up with a way to solve that problem. You know what I'm saying? Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Don?
One of the questions I have about the recycling toter system is that we have to purchase them. So we also have a large amount of rental property in the city as well. Will those people have to purchase them when they move on? Is the city going to buy those units back? Same thing with me. Say I was to sell my house, are you going to buy my unit back? Because other cities aren't going to pick those cans up, especially if they're logoed to East Peoria, and or if they do not have that service available. You're stuck with a can. that's,
Your new owner will appreciate it.
So you're telling me I need to purchase a can to move forward to give to a new owner if I'm a renter or if I'm an owner? And I don't think that's fair to the citizens that we should be subsidizing the next person that moves into the house. Same thing with the pickup system too. I agree with John. I bought a dryer. They offered me, they could take my dryer away. It would have cost me money. Why should I subsidize all the other places in the city that don't want to do that? They don't want to spend the money. Why should I do that? Once again, everybody should be responsible. And it's a shame that Waste Management won't let people bring their stuff up there and dump at the transfer station. Most cities have that available to their citizens, and I don't know why you guys don't negotiate that so that we can go up there. I know Peoria, they get a reduced rate.
You can take them to
So everybody can take it up? So
Residents can
earlier,
take it.
somebody said something about they didn't want to do anything but commercial.
They were
So-
trying, they've kind of, when we discussed it, I think the way I took their conversation is they don't want to be flooded with every person coming up to try to get rid of stuff.
Well,
up
they
there
want
in
to
the
maximize
process.
their profits, I understand that. But it's also the responsibility of the city to negotiate for its citizens so we can get rid of our stuff. We should be responsible. Like I said, you rent a truck, you hire somebody to come get it. There's no reason I should be subsidizing or paying for everybody else's stuff. So, and that's what all this stuff is based upon, is community. Now, and I'll go back, I'll go right to it. I keep advocating for yard waste pickup, but I get told, well, why should I pay for your yard waste pickup? Why should I pay for yours? Goes back to the same thing. Either we're a community or we're not. We can't pick and choose one thing over another. Once again, it's only a few people utilize this pickup. I've looked at those records. I know how that works. I know how much, it's a waste of time and money. People should be responsible for their own stuff, and they should be taking care of it. And, as far as recycling tipping fees, do you have a contract, a long-term contract that says you're only going to pay this amount, or is it a month-to-month? Do you actually know what you're going to pay each month for tipping fees for recycle?
We do. We have part, I guess that the answer is partially. We have a tipping fee that we pay for recycling that's a contractual agreement with Waste Management.
That's only to haul it to the place.
You're correct. They haul it, and then what we do is either receive a refund back if we've got positive recycling, or we end up with a second cost that goes to recycling.
So you really don't know
same
month to
thing.
month whether you're going to get money back or you're going to pay money.
You don't,
So
other
it's kind
than-
of like flipping a coin and tossing, you have no idea. What's the cost analysis to
It's-
garbage tipping
I'm
fee
going
versus?
to cut you off. This is a time of comment, not question back and forth, but
It- it-
you deserve the answer, and I think that you should give them to him, but perhaps at a special
But
meeting.
I'm just trying to throw this out. Has anybody actually thought this through really well?
Your point's well taken, Don.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adjourn this working session, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Call, second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Decker, roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers? Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting, aye, Your Honor.
We are adjourned. We'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. You got the experience to do that. Meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Densberger? Jeffers?
Here.
Call?
Here.
Mayor Mingus?
Here.
All present except Commissioner Densberger, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please stand for the invocation. Make standing for the pledge.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, thank you as we celebrate the beginning of spring today, changing of the calendar in a way but just the optimism that it brings for a new season, a winter behind, and just a nice thing. We do pray for our city, for the transition to in spring, for potential more stormy weather, but we do just rest in your care over us in that. As we deliberate today, as we contemplate today as Election Day in our state, in this area, votes still being cast, we pray your will be done. As we deliberate the business of the city, we pray that we would deliberate well, and we thank you for the freedom we have to, in this land, to exercise our system that's been given to us at such a great price over these years. We ask your blessing now in our meeting. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the minutes of the regular meeting held on March 6, 2018 be approved as printed.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Decker, discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. We have a proclamation tonight. Whereas Parkinson's disease is a chronic progressive disorder of the nervous system that affects movement for which there is currently no cure, and whereas 1 million people in the United States currently living with Parkinson's disease, with an additional 50 to 60,000 new cases are diagnosed each year, making Parkinson's disease the 14th leading cause of death in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control. And whereas every day the American Parkinson's Disease Association provides the support, education, and research that will help everyone impacted by Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest through research, patient and family services, education, and more. And whereas increased efforts and awareness are desperately needed to help expedite the research efforts into better treatments, medications, and ultimately a cure, as well as enhanced programs and services to help those impacted by Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest until a cure is found. And whereas increased efforts and awareness are desperately needed to help expedite the research efforts into better treatments, medications, and ultimately a cure, as well as enhanced programs and services. I think I just read that, but it's important. Whereas the world, the nation, and the city of East Peoria, Illinois, observe Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month in April 2018. And whereas the city of East Peoria, Illinois recognizes the efforts of American Parkinson's Disease Association's Midwest chapter to raise funds and promote awareness to fight Parkinson's disease, thereby improving the quality of life for those living with the disease. Now therefore, I, David W. Mingus, Mayor of the city of East Peoria, Illinois, in recognition of more than 55 years of indispensable services of the American Parkinson's Disease Association, and to the residents of East Peoria, do hereby proclaim April 2018 Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month. Will you folks please come forward? The work you do is just incredible. As I read this proclamation, I was thinking to myself, won't it be nice someday that we can read that there's a cure? Yes. Due to your efforts. Want to say a few words? Sure. Thank you. Sure.
First of all, I would like to thank
Thank you.
That way everybody at home can hear you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the council and the mayor for doing this proclamation. You've done it a number of years for us. And I will second your comment as you came down that maybe some year there will be a cure and we won't have to do this. It was once said that about 12 years ago when Michael J. Fox really came forward with his Parkinson's, that we know more about Parkinson's than we do any of the other neurological diseases, and we're the closest to curing it, but we're not there yet. The projections for Parkinson's are to more than double by 2014 or 2040. So it's not something that's easy. It's not something that is an elderly disease like most people think of it. I know some people that have been diagnosed in their 20s with it. So I would just like to thank everybody for making this proclamation and awareness here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you again very, very much. Other communications, Madam Clerk?
No other communications tonight, Your Honor.
Anybody in the audience want to speak to the council on an agenda item, come forward? Please, Jeff, come forward.
Mayor, council, first on the proclamation, I just comment that I had an uncle this morning pass away after a very long battle with Parkinson's. So feeling it in the family today. So I'm glad I'm here for that reason. A couple other items. Glad the garbage fee is off the table. So I'd like to thank the council for making that one go away. I know, a couple of the commissioners really stepped up on that, so thank you. But let's talk a little bit about the sales tax, because when I was here a few weeks ago, I said, if you really look to make the cuts, then more of us could, in the citizenry could get behind the sales tax. We're not feeling those cuts being made yet. I heard a great discussion about $30,000 being saved if we cut one of the two citywide cleanup weeks out. That $30,000, though, is a straight takeaway from services provided to the citizens. I sat in Commissioner Decker's seat 31 years ago as a street commissioner, and I fought for the citywide cleanup then because of what went in the ravines, because of the impact of people leaving it on the sides of the streets. There's other cuts that you should be making, and I know you can't agree on who loses their take-home vehicles. All of that anecdotally. I'd like to have you have that same discussion about the take-home vehicles right here in public, like you did about the solid waste. Because there's $30,000 to be saved on take-home vehicles. There's $30,000 to be saved in 25 different locations in your budget. Don't take $30,000 out of the citizens' services right away. And let's talk a little bit about the sales tax. According to the memo that's in the council packet, the sales tax will generate in a full year, the 0.5% increase, $2.64 million. $2.64 million. You've talked about having a $500,000 budget deficit. You talk about $300,000 of this $2.64 million going into reserves. So that's $800,000 of the $2.64 million that's accounted for. Where's the other $1.84 million going? City of Washington increased their sales tax last night. At least they committed to put it into streets. I mean, what I'm seeing tonight is a rush to get a sales tax passed so it can go effective July 1. Taxing double what you need to. I mean, easily you could just do a 0.25% increase and satisfy all the city's needs if you have any need whatsoever, because again, we haven't hit the cuts probably as hard as we could. And, no real explanation being said, other than putting it into reserves. And the idea of having a multi-year reserve plan being funded here is as silly as any of us thinking more than 13 months ahead. In 13 months, there'll be a municipal election, and just given retirement ages and things like that, there's a high likelihood the majority of the city council that's seated here today won't be seated here in the future. So the future city council will make decisions whether or not there's reserves built up year after year. So I'll be honest, I'm really confused as to why we think a 0.5 cent sales tax is needed, because there's nothing saying where the money's going. I was in the presentation a few weeks ago on the streets. The streets are deplorable. If there was a third resolution here that said, and, X dollars are going to additional streets, I would probably have a different attitude, to be perfectly candid. But I don't understand it. I mean, to me, it just makes the staff's job easier because they don't have to necessarily make hard decisions. Remember, I pointed out some silly little savings that you could be making just by operating better. Why do we buy business cards from Rockford? Why do we buy business cards from North Peoria? I was down at Office Max the other day. They're $9.99. We're paying $78 or $65. Again, it's symbolic. I was saying to one of the folks sitting in the back of the room, a lot of the cuts that we talk about are symbolic, necessarily more than substantive. But it doesn't take a lot of symbolic cuts to come up with $30,000 in savings and therefore giving the citizens back their second pickup week. It's not that hard, guys. And I know you're working hard, and I wish Commissioner Dinsberger didn't have to leave, because I'm not disagreeing with your effort. I'm disagreeing with the result still being that our form of government doesn't work. You've heard me say that many times. The administrator, I'm not going to harp on it again, but you've got a deadline coming up in July, whether or not we have a city administrator, whether or not we need a city administrator. Again, that's $200,000. There's a lot of things you can do before you start taking away another service from the citizens. Thank
Thank you, Jeff, very much. Anybody else? Seeing no one else, perfect. Charlie, please come forward.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Charlie.
Charlie Morgan. As to the 0.5% sales tax, I'd like somebody to make a commitment on where this is gonna go before I would even consider supporting it. Every other community that's raising it, saying where it's going. You commented that you wanted to get 3 million back into the reserve. You can't take this and start spending it and have 3 million back in the reserve. And I may not understand, and I'm all for what you're trying to do. You've got some very good ideas, Dennis, if we could just come up with the money. You say you need 3 million in reserve, 6 months worth of bills. Every time I look at the bills, they're between 1.2 and 1.6 million. Now, 6 months of that is 6+ million in reserve where we were once before, not 3 million. I may not understand big dollars, but I understand math. 3 million isn't 6 months in reserve. One thing I would like to comment on is, I know we're broke. That's pretty simple to find out. But it had absolutely nothing to do with workman's comp or pensions. Those people paid those pensions. When you do business, you gotta have workman's comp. That's the law. That's not the citizens' fault. That's poor management of our tax dollar over the years. I agree totally with you, Commissioner Call. We're in a terrible mess, okay? The money isn't there to do any of these things we'd like to do and still build a reserve. So when do we start worrying about this reserve? It's gotta be there. We can't go on like this. You learn something every day. Business cards from Rockford, Rock Island, wherever. Gotta be a connection here somewhere why we're not spending that little bit of money right here in our own community. Is it credit cards? I'm looking at that now. There's a lot that goes on our credit cards that the general population doesn't even know about. Am I correct on that? Do we make public what we spend monthly? Okay, so I can get that from the budget, the total amount of every credit card that's used monthly and what it's used
It's on the schedule of bills.
You're looking for purchases, Charlie?
Purchases are on the schedule of bills.
Anything, it isn't, okay, all right, so it'll tell me exactly if this credit card, because I'll go online, okay, I can do that.
It usually says like Morton Community Bank, and that will be associated with the credit card.
Yeah, so if somebody went away on a seminar and was gone 4 days, 8 meals, rented a car, that'll all be there on the credit cards.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I can't find on any credit card, correct?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Correct.
There's
It's all in
nothing
the
that you're
schedule
not
of bills.
entitled to, Charlie. Any expenditure you're.
Well,
entitled
any
to.
credit card to a elected official or a city employee, the taxpayer is entitled to.
That's right.
All right. So, good luck. I liked what I saw here tonight, but there's no money. And you need 6 million if you're gonna Am I correct? We're paying it averaged out 1.2 to 1.6 million a month. A month. Every time one of these comes out, that's what we're paying. 6 months of that would be more than $3 million, or am I confused with my math?
No, it's correct.
That's correct.
Correct. So 3 million isn't gonna put us where we need to be, where we were 8 years ago, or where you're saying we're gonna be with this half-a-cent increase. It might bring us to 3 million if we don't spend it, right? But it's not gonna bring us to 6 million, is it? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Anybody else?
I agreed with what some of you have said here. I want services. I like the services that are here in East Peoria, whether it's the fire service, the ambulance service is incredible. And like we kind of indicated earlier, I'm willing to pay for those extra services because I don't want to lose them, whether it's City Week cleanup. Now, I gotta say, mentioning City Week cleanup, I can see trying to go to one, and I can see trying to, so many of these different ideas that Rick and Dennis had, really look interesting and like they could be cost savers. I sure don't see a problem with raising the sales tax a little bit. It's sure not much. And it would bring in an awful lot. I guess I would like to see, like one of the gentlemen said, so how much of this that we bring in are we going to allocate to streets? Because streets, and it's going to be water lines now too, isn't it? I know up by my house, they've had those torn up for off and on, and hopefully this last one is going to last more than a year. But allocating it so that we knew exactly how much, that does make sense to me too. But I'm sure pleased to do it. Oh, and I was going to say too, do we even have the option of raising the motor fuel tax just within the city?
No.
No? Maybe you'd start pushing your legislators to do that. The price of gas is low, and it'd be more money to use on streets. Just a thought, because I agree, streets are something that really need it. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. All right, City Administrator, we do have the allocations of all the additional money that we'll be deriving, don't we?
We've talked about a number of different allocations
So we can
for
have
those,
that as
and
far as where that
it's
money's
mainly
going
going, number one, it's going to cover the costs we haven't covered yet in the budget. And two, all the other items are capital in nature amongst a number of departments, including streets, fire. It should be on. So it's really going to capital items. In the current year's budget, as you all know, we had very, very little capital spending, and in the proposed budget, there was absolutely no capital spending, and still we didn't even cover the cost of our operations as it currently exists.
So we can
with
get
all
that
the cuts.
itemized out as far as where it's going to go, so the public has.
It's our budget. Yeah, it'll be part of the budget, so people will know where everything goes.
Very good. All right, consent agenda, in agreement, Commissioner Decker?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Desberger had to leave, so I'm going to be taking over for his, so bear with me, please. All right, I have a consent agenda, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a consent agenda consisting of items numbered 1 through 6. Item number 1, adoption of resolution number 1718-124, resolution to approve payment of the schedule of bills number 21 in the amount of $1,604,831.80. Item number 2, adoption of resolution number 1718-117 on the second reading, resolution allocating of $450,000 motor fuel tax funds for the 2018 street maintenance program and authorizing an engineering agreement with Patrick Meyer and Associates for the street maintenance program. Item number 3, adoption of resolution number 1718-120 on its second reading. Resolution approving a right-of-way use agreement with McLeod USA Telecommunications Services. Item number 4, adoptions of ordinance number 4366 on a second reading, an ordinance adding a provision to Title 10, Chapter 1 of the City Code prohibiting violations of rules of regulation of the patron conduct for inside public areas of civic complex. Item number 5, adoption of ordinance number 4373 on its second reading, an ordinance amending Title 5, Chapter 7 and 11 of the East Peoria City Code pertaining to parking requirements. Item number 6, adoption of ordinance number 4379 on its second reading, an ordinance amending Title 3, Chapter 3 of the City of East Peoria, Illinois City Code liquor control regulations to change number of Class D licenses issued in the city limits and change the provisions regarding delivery, as listed on the agenda for this meeting to be considered by omnibus vote.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call, discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move you that the items numbered 1 through 6 listed on the current agenda be hereby approved and adopted, and the items numbered 2 through 6, having been read once by their title and having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call, discussion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Mayor, I move you that ordinance number 4381, hereto attached, an ordinance authorizing a special use for property located at the intersection of Highview Court and Centennial Drive in the city of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, to be allowed the construction of a senior living facility, be read at length by the clerk, and that said ordinance number 4381 be accepted on its first reading and hereby adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Jeffers.
Thank you, Commissioner. Morgan?
Whereas Devin Birch, the petitioner, has petitioned for special use to allow the construction of a senior living facility on property zoned as R4 Multiple Family Dwelling District, which property is shown and described at Exhibit A attached here to and incorporated herein by reference. Which property as so described is hereinafter referred to as the property. Whereas after hearing pursuant to duly published notice, the East Peoria Zoning Board of Appeals has recommended approval of the proposed special use as proposed. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that Section 1 is special use to allow the construction of a senior living facility, rest home, on the property is hereby approved. Section 2, the establishment and continuation of the special use hereby authorized is contingent upon continual compliance with all applicable provisions of the city code upon the violation of or failure to comply with any provisions of the city code applicable to the property or its use. City council may, after providing reasonable notice and an opportunity for a hearing, terminate the special use hereby approved. Section 3, this ordinance is hereby ordered to be published in pamphlet form by the East Peoria City Clerk, and said clerk is ordered to keep at least 3 copies hereof available for public inspection in the future and in accordance with the Illinois Municipal Code. Section 4, this ordinance is in addition to all other ordinances on the subject and shall be construed therewith, excepting as to that part in direct conflict with any other ordinance. In the event of such conflict, the provisions hereof shall govern. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and 10-day period of publication in the manner provided by law.
Thank you, Morgan. This, I'll quickly pass off to Ty here in just a second, but there's another senior living facility that is wanting to come to East Peoria, come to East Peoria in the area of Rosewood. I've always appreciated having these facilities in town. They're good neighbors. They always keep their property up well. The good thing about this is it's over 100 rooms, I believe. I'll let Ty talk about it in a second. But what that means is a build-out that's going to be very substantial. Many jobs are going to be created because of this facility. So not only are we going to have those added jobs and have those much-needed rooms for people to utilize, the tax revenue that's going to be generated for this is going to be much needed as well. We talk about the city of East Peoria needing money. Quick, dirty math estimation, I think it should be somewhere around $19,000 or in that neighborhood for the city itself, potentially when this is done. That's just the city. We have a couple school districts, we have park district, and everything else that will benefit from the property taxes for this facility. I mentioned a second ago about the much-needed utilization. If you talk with many of the nursing homes, you will find that there are waiting lists. That I know years ago when we were looking at one for my dad, it was difficult to find ones that, and he suffered from Parkinson's as well. It was difficult to find one that was that we trusted. So I do believe there's a need, and I'm happy that people that are wanting to build them are looking at East Peoria to build. It's nice whenever our community can grow. I'm happy for the tax revenue. Ty, maybe talk about the numbers in a little bit about.
Sure thing. Thank you, Commissioner. So the proposed Phase 1, this is a two-phase project. The first phase, according to the petitioner, would generate roughly 65 new jobs. It's a $7 million construction value with, that doesn't include the cost of land or FF&E. And then Phase 2 is going to be up to 40 more jobs, with the total project is somewhere in the ballpark of $15 million. So it's a very significant investment, and it would be adjacent to the Rosewood facility on Centennial.
I'm pretty excited about it. Obviously, I'll be supporting it tonight.
Other discussion, please.
Yeah, just, I attended the zoning Board of Appeals meeting, I guess that's what you call it. I was there for the chickens, but I happened to catch these gentlemen giving their presentation, and, you know, they mentioned a couple other facilities that are similar in nature that they currently have. There's no question it's quality. I do share the fire chief's concern, quite honestly, about the size of the facility and the number of existing senior facilities. I'm not going to hang up a vote just for that reason, but I do hope to have future discussions with this council on how we need to take a serious look at the backside of that to make sure that we have all the bases covered moving forward. But I will support it, but I do share some of the same concerns the chief has. So.
Other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting, aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right, next, Mayor, ordinance number 4382. Mr. Mayor, I move you that ordinance number 4382 hereto attached, an ordinance authorizing a special use for property located at 310 Maple Street in the city of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, to allow a non-residential permitted use of a lot having an area less than 1 acre on property zoned as M3. Be read at length by the clerk, and that said ordinance number 4382 be accepted on its first reading and be hereby adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
Thank you, Commissioner. Morgan?
Whereas Dan Carey, the petitioner, has petitioned for a special use to allow a non-residential permitted use on a lot having less than 1 acre on property zoned as M3 Manufacturing District, which property is shown and described at Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. Which property is so described as hereinafter referred to as the property. And whereas after hearing pursuant to duly published notice, the East Peoria Zoning Board of Appeals has recommended approval of the proposed special use subject to certain conditions hereinafter set forth. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that Section 1, a special use to allow non-residential permitted use on the property consisting of lot having an area less than 1 acre is hereby approved. Section 2, the establishment and continuation of the special use hereby authorized is contingent upon continual compliance with all applicable provisions of the city code and with the following special conditions. 1, improvements to and use of the property shall be consistent with material submitted by petitioner in support of his application for the special use. Upon the violation of or failure to comply with the foregoing conditions or with any provisions of the city code applicable to the property or its use, City Council may, after providing reasonable notice and an opportunity for a hearing, terminate the special use hereby approved. Section 3, this ordinance is hereby ordered to be published in pamphlet form by the East Peoria City Clerk. Said clerk is ordered to keep at least 3 copies hereof available for public inspection in the future and in accordance with the Illinois Municipal Code. Section 4, this ordinance is in addition to all other ordinances on the subject and shall be construed therewith, excepting as to that part in direct conflict with any other ordinance, and in the event of such conflict, the provisions hereof shall govern. Section 5, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, 10-day period of publication in the manner provided by law.
Thank you, Morgan. As long as it's okay for me to talk about what they're going to be using it for, that's okay, Ty?
Sure.
Okay. This is a 1,950 square foot building, and it's going to be by a gentleman that's going to use it as his personal woodworking shop. It's in an area that's adjacent to CAT KK, so I guess it fits well with the area. Certainly, I tend to believe that people, as long as they don't do anything wrong, should be able to do what they want with the property. I don't see any problem with this, so I am going to be supportive. Ty, is there anything else you want to say about it?
Just so everybody knows, what drives a special use here is this zoning district requires that any sort of development that's not residential on less than an acre of property does require the special use. But we did notify neighbors, did not receive any comments that were derogatory or didn't feel it would be a good fit.
It was a ZBA 6-0 yes vote.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it was the same ZBA meeting, which had about 50 attendees there for the chicken, so I would assume that if many were opposed, they would have spoke out at that time. He answered all their questions and quite honestly is willing to work with some of the things they recommended to him, so, yeah.
Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Next, Mayor, ordinance number 4353. Mr. Mayor, I move you that ordinance number 4353 here to attached, an ordinance imposing an additional 1/2% non-home rule municipal sales tax be read at length by the clerk, and that said ordinance number 4353 be accepted on its first reading and be hereby adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Jeffers.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Whereas the city of East Peoria is a non-home rural municipality with a population of more than 20,000 but less than 25,000 persons, and whereas the city of East Peoria has prior to January 1st, 1987 established a redevelopment project area that has been certified as a state sales tax boundary, and whereas the city of East Peoria has issued bonds or otherwise incurred indebtedness to pay for the cost in excess of $5 million, which is secured in part by a tax increment allocation fund in accordance with the provisions of 11-74.4 of the Illinois Municipal Code, and whereas with the exception of certain items that are titled and registered by the agency of the state of Illinois, and certain items of food, medications, and other materials as defined by Illinois statutes, the city has been empowered by Public Act 88-334, effective August 13th, 1993, to levy and impose a tax upon all persons engaged in the business of selling tangible personal property at retail in the municipality, and 2, all persons engaged in the business of making sales of service in the municipality. Whereas the authority of the city to impose these taxes as established in Public Act 88-334 has been codified as sections 8-11-1.6 and 8-11-1.7 of the Illinois Municipal Code, 65 ILCS 5/8-11-1.6 and 8-11-1.7, as amended from time to time. Whereas the City Council of the City of East Peoria hereby finds and determines that it is in the best interest of the city to generate revenues through additional sales tax rather than increase real property taxes or other service fees, so that non-citizens are required to share the city's financial burden. And whereas the City Council further finds and determines that it is in the best interest of the city to impose an additional 0.5% sales tax on 1, all persons engaged in the business of selling tangible personal property at retail in the city, and 2, all persons engaged in the business of making sales of service in the city, subject to exceptions provided for below. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois as follows. Section 1, the findings and recitations herein above set forth are adopted and found to be true. Section 2, an additional tax is hereby imposed upon all persons engaged in the business of selling tangible personal property other than an item of tangible personal property titled and registered with an agency of the state's government at retail in this municipal at the rate of an additional 0.5% of the gross receipts from such sales made in the course of such business while this ordinance is in effect. And a tax is hereby imposed upon all persons engaged in the municipality in the business of making sales of service at the rate of an additional 0.5% of the selling price of all tangible personal property transferred by such servicemen as an incident to a sale of service. Neither tax shall be imposed on the sales of food for human consumption that is to be consumed off the premises where it is sold, other than alcoholic beverages, soft drinks, and food that has been prepared for immediate consumption, and prescription and non-prescription medicines, drugs, and medical appliances and insulin, urine testing materials, syringes, and needles used by diabetics. The imposition of these non-home rule taxes are made in accordance with the provisions of Section 8-11-1.6 and 8-11-1.7, respectively, of the Illinois Municipal Code. Section 3, the tax is hereby imposed, and all civil penalties that may be assessed as an incident thereto shall be effective as of July 1st, 2018, as soon as otherwise permitted by law. Section 4, the taxes hereby imposed and all civil penalties that may be assessed as an incident thereto shall be collected and enforced by the Department of Revenue of the State of Illinois. The Department of Revenue shall have full power to administer and enforce the provisions of this ordinance. Section 5, Title 3, Chapter 1, Section 1 of the Code of the City of East Peoria is hereby deleted in its entirety and replaced as follows. 3-1-1, non-home rule municipal retailers occupation tax. Tax imposed. Tax is hereby imposed upon all persons engaged in the business of selling tangible personal property other than an item of tangible personal property that is titled and registered by an agency of the State of Illinois at retail in the city at the rate of 1 3/4% of the gross receipts from such sales made in the course of such business while this section is in effect, in accordance with the provisions of Section 8-11-1.6 of the Illinois Municipal Code, 65 ILCS 5/8-11-1.6, as amended from time to time. This tax shall not be imposed on the sales of food for human consumption that is consumed off the premises where it is sold, other than alcoholic beverages, soft drinks, and food that has been prepared for immediate consumption, and prescription and non-prescription medicines, drugs, medical appliances, and insulin, urine testing materials, syringes, and needles used by diabetics. B, returns to be filed. Each such person engaged in such business in the city shall file the report to the State Department of Revenue required by Section 3 of the Retailer's Occupation Tax, 35 ILCS 120/1 et sec. C, payment of tax. At the time such report is filed, there shall be paid to the State Department of Revenue the amount of tax hereby imposed, on account of the receipts from sales of tangible personal property during the reporting period. Section 6, Title 3, Chapter 1, Section 1.1 of the Code of the City of East Peoria is hereby deleted in its entirety. Section 7, Title 3, Chapter 1, Section 2 of the Code of the City of East Peoria is hereby deleted in its entirety and replaced as follows. 3-1-2, non-home rule municipal service occupation tax. A, tax imposed. A tax is hereby imposed upon all persons engaged in the city in the business of making sales of service at the rate of 1 3/4% of the selling price of all tangible personal property transferred by said servicemen, either in the form of tangible personal property or in the form of real estate, as an incident to a sale of service, in accordance with the provisions of Section 8-11-1.7 of the Illinois Municipal Code 65 ILCS 5/8-11-1.6, as amended from time to time. This tax shall not be imposed on the sales of food for human consumption that is to be consumed off the premises where it is sold, other than alcoholic beverages, soft drinks, and food that has been prepared for immediate consumption, and prescription and non-prescription medicines, drugs, medical appliances, insulin, urine testing materials, syringes, and needles used by diabetics. B, returns to be filed. Every serviceman required to account for non-home rule municipal service occupation tax for the benefit of the city shall file the report to the State Department of Revenue required by Section 9 of the Service Occupation Tax Act, 35 ILCS 1150/1 et sec. C, payment of tax. At the time such report is filed, there shall be paid to the State Department of Revenue the amount of tax hereby imposed on account of the receipts from transfers of tangible personal property or real estate incident to a sale of service during the reporting period. Section 8, Title 3, Chapter 1, Section 2.1 of the Code of the City of East Peoria is hereby deleted in its entirety. Section 9, the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to file a certified copy of this ordinance with the Illinois Department of Revenue on or before the first day of April 2018. Section 10, this ordinance supersedes as an additional to all other ordinances on the subject and shall be construed therewith, excepting as to that part in direct conflict with any other ordinance, and in the events of such conflict, the provisions hereof shall govern. Section 11, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approval in the manner provided by law.
Thank you, Morgan. It's an awful lot of reading. Obviously, this is the half-cent sales tax that is spoken about tonight. Point well taken prior to this meeting, a couple points there. First of all, I'm just going to give you my view. Cuts are an ongoing process. I do think there are probably areas that we still need to cut. I believe that cuts are something that we have been doing, looking at over the last couple of years. I don't believe we frivolously spend. I do believe there are areas of improvement. I think it was recognized numerous years ago that we were getting to the point where our revenues were declining as compared to our expenditures. We recognized it, I don't know, I estimate 7, 8 years ago. But it's not popular and it's not easy to do things like raise property taxes. And I've made some of those votes as well, not to raise property taxes. I think that when you get to a point where your expenditures have exceeded your revenues or getting close to that, you got to figure out what to do. So that's the crossroads that we're at. First of all, we could start looking at which services we're going to give up. I say first of all are the cuts. So let's start there. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we have made some cuts, but we do have more to go. We have to look at the services that we currently provide and decide whether or not we can continue to provide all those services. The services in East Peoria, as we spoke tonight about the cleanup week, things like that are very important to the residents of East Peoria. And I don't think something that they want us to very quickly give up. They are things that people have come to expect. Right or wrong, they are what people in this community who have been here for many years have come to expect. So we could start looking at what services to whittle away, decrease, but that's a never-ending task. I mean, if we don't do something about our revenues, then we'll just have to continue to do that each year. So then the other part of this is try to figure out how to get more revenues. As I've said a minute ago, we have not raised property taxes. There have been occurrences where the property tax may have gone up slightly, but we've had an intention for many years to try to keep the property taxes flat. Our property tax rate, I believe, is the same or at least very close to what it was back in 1997. I know that date because that's the date that I was hired on the fire department. We've kept our property taxes where they were. I doubt there are many communities throughout central Illinois, throughout the state, that can make that same comment. We've done a very good job of property taxes. We've always had the riverboat gaming, and our sales tax has done just an awesome job. Our sales down here, if you look at the levy district, has taken off, and it's allowed us to weather the storm without raising property taxes. We've come to a point, though, where it's getting very tight. So besides looking at property taxes, no one wants to hear that, and I'm one of those people as well. I tend to look at property taxes like you have no choice. If a community, if a school district, park district, or whatever says that you have to pay a certain amount in property taxes, that's what you have to pay. The alternative is to lose your property. And people on fixed income, it's very difficult to take something like property taxes and increase that. That's something that I've never wanted to do. The other idea that's been mentioned is the garbage fee. It's just something that I think from the very beginning I didn't like. I think that was too big of a fee onto the backs of the people in East Peoria, some of them on fixed incomes. So then you look at sales tax. For me, it's the smallest amount of money spread over the largest amount of people. It was once said to me, I haven't done the math, but it was once said to me that it's about a 9-to-1 ratio. For every 10 people that shop in the city of East Peoria, 9 of them are from someplace other than East Peoria for every dollar spent. Like I said, I haven't done that math, but I believe that to be pretty accurate. If you look at what this sales tax will do on a $1,000 purchase, it will increase about $5. And I say that because I tried to figure out how much I spend in a given year in the city of East Peoria on sales taxable items. And my estimate is somewhere probably around $5,000 in an average year. So I can expect that my costs are going to go up somewhere around $25. My math is correct. I'm pretty sure it is. To me, I'm accepting of that, because it spreads it out over a large number of people. Plus, it gives people the ability and option to shop around. If somebody is on a fixed income, it's not a tax placed on their head and say you either pay this or you lose your property. That's why sales tax has always been something that I've been happier about than something like property tax. On the other item, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second, but I do want to mention it. A point well taken as far as what are you going to do with this money? Well, being the streets commissioner, man, I salivate over the opportunity to spend more money in streets. I'll tell you what, I've been commissioner now for 11 years, and my first couple of years were great. The number of dollars we were able to spend in streets, we made great strides. And then we still did well, but the downturn in the economy in trying to make ends meet in the city has really hit the streets the hardest, I believe. So for me, putting more money into streets is something that's my number one priority. I do believe in, I think former mayor is correct, we cannot force future councils to abide by the notion of putting a certain amount in general fund, but I do like that suggestion, and that's why I'll support that as well. The thought is that one of the reasons that we found ourselves in this position is because we don't have a reserve that can help us weather the storm. So I think in the future, it is smart of us to try to build up our reserves. I know the question of 6 months, I believe that the attempt is to try to put $4 million in there, which I believe to be 90 days or somewhere around there. Is that
$4 million is 90 days, maybe 100 days worth of operating cash.
Okay. And I think in a perfect world, we would get to 6 months, but I think the $4 million amount, which is what is, I think, proposed in this next ordinance, is a good starting point to that. When we built this building right here, we didn't take a loan out on it. And that has helped contribute to decrease our fund balance. So would we have been smarter to take a loan on this building and have the money sitting in the bank? I'm not going to go back and say what we should have done, but it's something that we have to at least think about in the future. So general fund balance along with streets are two of my priorities. My next priority is we have some capital needs that we absolutely have to take care of. When I look at our garbage trucks, they are falling apart. We have been scared numerous times with the possibility of not being able to pick up people's garbage or having our crews go into many hours of overtime in order to pick up the garbage. We have to purchase more garbage trucks. We are either 3 or 4 years now into not purchasing a plow truck. We have to purchase plow trucks. Without that, I mean, we all live in central Illinois winter. None of us want to be here if we don't have plow trucks. We won't be able to get around our town. Our plow crews do an awesome job keeping the streets safe, but they're not going to be able to if we don't start purchasing the trucks to help them do their job. There are many items. Cop cars, for example. We've continued to buy cop cars each year, but not as many as we should, at least to keep up with our plan. Some people have said, well, we should change our plan, and that is something that is being looked at as well. But all of our capital expenditures need to be looked at. We have to look at what vehicles we need to buy, as well as the buildings that we have. We've put off maintenance on some of our buildings that is now costing us more money. If we were able to do it a couple of years ago, it wouldn't be as expensive as it is today to fix. So I'm not happy about raising the sales tax, but I look right at the cameras and say it's necessary. It's either that or we have to decrease service. And that is something, when I have done my questions to people that I talk to on Facebook and in the public, people do not want to give up their services. And I understand that. I don't either. I live in East Peoria because I love this town, and I love the services that this town provides. So it's not something I am happy about doing, but I can tell you with all honesty, it's something that we need to do.
Other comments, please? Commissioner Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, couple elephants in the room, number one being the city. I've stood on that side. I've been critical of many decisions made by the council from a fiscal standpoint. I've sat in this chair for 3 years and done the same. Where's it leave us? I'm of one opinion, one vote, and at the end of the day, criticism isn't getting us out of this hole.
That's right.
So I want to talk about the other elephant that hasn't been mentioned yet tonight, that I brought up first meeting in August of last year. The state passed a budget. State didn't change their business practice. They increased your income taxes. They increased corporate income taxes. What'd they do to the city? I said it back in August. They have an admin fee now to collect the taxes. That's 2%. We had a balanced budget. We bought 5 squad cars. That was it last year. We balanced our budget. State comes back and says, hey, by the way, we're keeping some of the money. They kept additional personal property replacement tax. There's about a $300,000 hole right there. So that's 2 elephants. At the end of the day, what do? Here's what we're going to do. We have no choice, in my humble opinion, but to raise sales tax. I mean, it sickens me beyond belief. I feel like going back and asking taxpayers to ante up more money based on decisions that they didn't get to make personally, but I guess what we got elected for was to try to make the right decisions. At the end of the day, I think the only right decision here, the only path forward for this city to fix streets, build reserves. Reserves have been depleted. We have basically nothing. So to answer your question on why I would support and where I think the money needs to go, 3 areas. Reserves, number 1, that's coming up. Number 2, streets. Number 3, capital expenses. I told Mr. Eater that's why I would support it tonight. Unfortunately for me, the timing's not right from the standpoint of this comes before the budget does. So it's yet to be determined how everybody else is going to decide how those funds are going to be allocated. But I am going to support this, as painful as it is. There's no path forward without it. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jeffers?
Yes, I appreciate Commissioner Call's comments. I agree with him, and actually Commissioner Decker. We've talked about this for quite a while. This is not just something that's caught us by surprise. It's been a process here in Illinois with what we have. Today's election day, and I'm not sure what's going to change in the next term with whoever's elected. But all we can do is, and I've said this many times, is we can have some control a little bit over what we have here in East Peoria. I know people do like their services. I do too. I've been here my whole life, and you know, things that we have that are of great value that were begun many years ago have great cost today. And I think it comes down to priorities, and it's like, you know, we have a ambulance service which is second to none in the state. Really, we do. Emergency medical, and it's very important. Now, if you don't need it, that's fine, it's great, but if you do, that's very important. But that has a cost, and other towns in our area choose not to go that way and not spend money there. This city has made that decision years ago to go that way, and I'm very proud of that. We've documented pretty well the capital expenditures of what we really need just to maintain a good business plan, maintain the streets. We'd like to be able to spend $1.5 million, $2 million a year on streets. I think that's a good ballpark figure. I think with our engineering and the way we've done different repairs, we've gone to improved methods. We've actually been driven to better efficiencies, and we're getting some more bang for our buck. So in some ways that's been positive, but we're still, if you only spend, you know, $400,000, $500,000 a year on streets when you should be $1 million, $1.5 million, pretty soon you're getting really far behind. It is true, the income tax that people were hit with here in the States, taking, in some cases, hundreds of dollars a month from people. We're talking about Commissioner Decker mentioned if you spend $5,000, that's $25 additional dollars for the sales tax proposal that we have. And some people are losing that easy a week and out of their paycheck, more than that. So I understand that. But at the same time, we can, here's what we've got. We've got a trough of time here that we see, and best we can look ahead. The city's made a lot of great investments out here with what you see outside the door, and not just in the last 10 years, the last 30 years of a change from this all being factory and a great tax base in that way to a sales tax-based economy. It really is. And we still have our residential area, but what we do know is that by about 2027, that we're making dollars back in our investment already, but by another less than 10 years, we'll just say 10, we should see, even as these properties are paid off, our infrastructure costs that we've paid to do all this, it goes down and goes away, just like paying off the mortgage of your home. Then we do see some relief in sight coming in those out years. It's not 25 years away like you paying your mortgage off. This is like within the next 10. And we'll see probably estimates approximately $8 million additional bottom line revenue coming to the city. That's a lot of money for a city our size if we can increase that kind of income. This sales tax only covers 2.5 in a full year's change, and we won't really see that until the following budget year. But what we have, this sales tax isn't going to pay for everything. It's not. There's going to be has to be an ongoing working together to come up with additional dollars. This is not an end all. It's not. But it is working at getting us to that 2027 date where we have these extra dollars that begin to pile in that will make a huge difference. And eventually, this all goes off, and then the schools and all the other taxing bodies get the advantage of all this when the bills are all paid. That's going to be a great time, and we're looking forward to that. But we're in this trough, and we don't have a large amount of reserves. You know, sometimes we're criticized for not having reserves, and we have a plan to put in reserves, and we get criticized for that. I think this is very healthy, and we've advocated that for a long time, that any plan we have should have reserves. And so basically, we're going to have to pay our bills, and if we don't do this, then that means there's no more capital to be spent on your street, enough to pay for the road salt, maybe to melt off the ice, but not much more than that. Those are the things you don't really want to have to face, and we've been looking at that for months, the last 2-3 years. And so, anyway, it's all documented there. I think I'll just conclude my remarks saying I will support it. I think there's ways that we can get there to fill. What we need is to have a long-term budget plan. We've had no budget plan in the last 2 or 3. We've had no spending, and you cannot work and budget very well when you just, I know it's like your home, but if we can have more of a long-term, we can be more efficient, we know where we're headed, and I think I give our employees credit, our managers credit for saving actually several $1 million the last few years overall, and it's going to take that to continue, and we don't know what's going to be hit from us from Springfield or whatever, but with the extra pension costs, that isn't a reality above and beyond what we were expecting, and again, we have to pay it. And so I will support this. It's not something that anyone takes delight in raising tax. I've talked to some general managers of very large stores in our city, maybe the largest, and they understand where we're at. They have competition, but Washington raised their sales tax. You know what Washington has that we don't have? One thing that's been mentioned already, they have a motor fuel tax. And so they have a little extra tool in their toolkit. If we had that, if we had a motor fuel tax that would give us $1 million a year, $1.5 million at a very low cost to the consumer, that would give us a year-by-year thing. But we don't have that, so we work from a different set of revenue. That's okay, but just so you know that. So I conclude, I will support it, and we'll continue to work. I know in Public Works and other areas, we'll continue to work, all the departments, to make the best value for our taxpayers and make the very best in the years to come for those that are sitting behind this desk.
Lots been said. I don't think I have to repeat it. I will say I'm a little less optimistic, and I'm a very optimistic person as far as the future. I think there's going to be more unexpected mandates from the state, more takeaways, and we need to be ready and not look to the state or feds to bail us out.
Agreed.
In order to do that, we need reserves and be very conscious regarding our areas of priority. And I think the council's committed to doing that, but I believe there's more to come, and we have to be ready for it. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Next, Mayor, it's resolution, long one, I'm reading. Resolution number 1718-123, resolution establishing set aside of revenues from non-home rule sales tax revenues for city's reserve fund. Whereas the city council has implemented an additional 0.5% non-home rule sales tax by ordinance 4353, which is being adopted simultaneously with this resolution. And whereas due to recent financial challenges and economic conditions faced by the city, and the city's reserve funds have been a reduction in recent years, and whereas the city council intends to use a portion of the non-home rule sales tax revenues generated by the additional 0.5% implemented by ordinance 4353 to supplement the city's reserve funds to ensure that the city's reserve funds are maintained at a financially responsible level. And whereas the city council hereby finds that it is in the best interest of the city to designate and set aside a specified amount of the non-home rule sales tax revenues generated by an additional 0.5% implemented by ordinance 4353 on an annual basis until the city's reserve funds are maintained at a fiscally responsible level. And whereas the city council hereby further finds that it is in the best interest of the city and financially responsible to set aside these additional revenues incrementally on an annual basis until the city's reserve funds are increased to such financially responsible level. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council, City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that Section 1, the above recitations are found to be true and correct. Section 2, for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, the city shall set aside $250,000 of revenues generated by the additional 0.5% non-home rule sales tax implemented by ordinance 4353 into the city's reserve fund for the city's general fund. Section 3, for the 2019-2020 fiscal year, the city shall set aside $300,000 of revenues generated by the additional 0.5% non-home rule sales tax implemented by ordinance 4353 into the city's reserve fund for the city's general fund. Section 4, for each fiscal year after the 2019-2020 fiscal year, the city shall continue to set aside $300,000 of revenues generated by additional 0.5% non-home rule sales tax implemented by ordinance 4353 into the city's reserve fund for the city's general fund until the city's reserve balance reaches $4 million. And when the city's reserve fund reaches $4 million in total fund, these revenues generated by the additional non-home rule sales tax authorized by the ordinance 4353 shall only be used thereafter as needed to supplement the city's reserve fund in order to maintain the $4 million minimum level throughout the applicable fiscal year. Section 5, the city treasurer shall take the necessary steps to implement the provisions of this resolution during the 2018-2019 fiscal year and every year thereafter as provided herein. The city budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year and every year thereafter shall allocate the respective amount of non-home rule sales tax revenues for the city's reserve fund as provided in this resolution. In Section 6, the resolution shall be effective until the implementation of the additional 0.5% non-home rule sales tax established by ordinance 4353, and this resolution shall remain effective until further action specifically addressing the provisions of this resolution is taken by the City Council. Mr. Mayor, I move you that resolution number 1718-123 be adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Call. One question we didn't answer a little while ago, why the rush? This is not rush, we spoke about it a while ago, but one thing is if we don't get it in by the end of March, then we are setting ourselves 3 months farther back. When we start it tonight, Jeff, you want to talk about when we will first start collecting?
Well, it's actually 6 months behind because
6 months, sorry.
we have to notify the state by April 1 to start collecting on July 1. And there are only 2 times a year you can start collecting, July 1 and January 1. So you have to notify them 3 months ahead of time, essentially, of that figure. So that's why we have to start at this early to get it into notice to the state so they can put it in their process to start collection on those in July 1. We won't actually see any of those dollars until October 1 because you actually start collecting at July 1, so that means the retailers start collecting at July 1. You know, they only remit once a month at the end of the month. It goes to the state, and there's a delay of when we actually see that money. So we won't see any of this raise until around October 1st.
Yeah. And that's important because if you notice in this resolution, we allocated $250,000 this year, and then $300,000 the subsequent years. And the reason is because this year, we're only going to be receiving 6 months of that half-cent sales tax. So instead of $2.6 or so million, we're only going to get half of that. Fortunately, we'll have the Christmas season in there, but it's obviously there has to be a point in which we choose. And so this year, there's going to be a little bit less than in future years. To talk about this general fund, it is something that I believe in. It's like your own personal accounting at your house. The general fund in the future, once we do reach this, will be our rainy day fund. And a few years ago, the city of East Peoria, although we did spend a lot of money, we were very fortunate not to have what happened to Washington happen in the city of East Peoria. We had a lot of people lose their house. Commissioner lost his house in that, was able to be rebuilt. But in comparison with the amount of money that the city of Washington had to spend, East Peoria was blessed. We're fortunate that we didn't have quite as large of a catastrophe for our community. It's important for us in the future to put ourselves in position that if something like that comes along, that we will have the money sitting there, and we don't have to go out and get a loan. Just in your own personal finances, don't have to go out and put something on a credit card. So it's something that I am eager for. $4 million is what's listed on this. It would be nice someday if you see $10 million sitting in our reserve fund, so we're very financially stable.
Other discussion?
I just want to say, I think it speaks for itself.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
Jeffers.
Aye.
Call.
Aye.
Mayor Mingus.
Aye.
All present voting, aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next, Mayor, Resolution Number 1718-122. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that a public hearing will be held by the City Council on Tuesday evening, April 3rd, 2018, at 6 p.m. in the City Council Chambers in the Civic Complex, 401 West Washington Street, East Peoria, Illinois, for the purpose of giving interested citizens the opportunity to provide written oral comments on the proposed appropriation ordinance and the proposed working cash budget for the City of East Peoria for the fiscal year May 1, 2018 and April 30th, 2019. Be it further resolved that the city clerk give public notice of said public hearing in a manner provided by law.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
I'm sorry, I should have read one more sentence, and that this resolution number 1718-122 be adopted as presented.
Commissioner Call.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something that we do every year, and obviously, we're going to be dealing with our budget here soon, and this public hearing is set for April 3rd at 6 p.m.
Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker.
Aye.
Jeffers.
Aye.
Call.
Aye.
Mayor Mingus.
Aye.
All present voting, aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more item, Mayor. Resolution number 1718-121. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that resolution number 1718-121, hereto attached, a resolution approving the annual EDC contribution of $10,000 to the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council be approved, and this resolution number 1718-121 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
Thank you, Commissioner Call. This is something that we do every year. The Economic Development Council is something that contributes to the community. Ty, you want to talk a little bit about their involvement?
Yeah, it's a regional entity that looks at economic development issues. They routinely pass down leads and other information about what's going on in the area and who's looking for, as far as site selectors. This is actually for this current fiscal year. It is a budgeted item. We delayed it a little bit to kind of see how the new executive director position settled out, and looks like we have a real good one in Chris Setti, so we're looking forward to his leadership and moving that organization forward.
Thank you.
I know Commissioner Densberger is pretty active in this, and in light of his absence, I know he's supportive of this as well, so.
They are really launching besides their, I didn't interrupt you, did I?
No, other than, real quick, it's a budgeted item, so thought I'd point that out.
I think it's worth noting that they have attacked the workforce development aspect in our community, that we don't have post-qualified people to fulfill hundreds of jobs in our area, $50,000 or more, and it's really a shame that we're at about a 40% post-education when most communities are at 60%. So they've attacked this head-on, and hopefully, through their efforts, we can get our workforce up to take advantage of some of these jobs that are coming, what people from outside are coming in and taking. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
That is all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Jeffers.
One item, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, the resolution number 1718-125, hereto attached, a resolution approving a contract with Optimum Health Solutions for assisting with the Employee Wellness Program be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-125 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
Thank you, Commissioner Call. This is an annual item for us. One thing that I've noted this or seen it and seen it demonstrated, I really like the preventative health care fair we have for our employees to head off, the testing to head off things that might be, that you aren't expecting. It's great preventive care, and it's a good thing for our employees. Mr. Reed or Jeff, would you comment? You're on that group that oversees this a bit.
Yeah, and we have a great group of people that on our wellness committee that promotes wellness amongst all our city employees, and this is a big part of that program, paying for some of the preventative testing and educating all our employees on how to live a healthier life. And it has a direct impact on the city's budget in reducing the cost of our insurance, which we're self-insured, so anything we could do to reduce that cost goes into saving the city money long-term. So this is a lot of education, some testing that go into getting people to find out more about their health, the risk factors, and then educating the employees about the risk factors, how to mitigate those and live a healthier life. It's a very good program, well-received within the city.
The other factor, too, that's in the agreement is the coaching part of that, where they just don't stop. They continually, periodically check up to make sure you're going to your exercise program or eating your diet. And
correct.
So that's a good feature.
The more indicators you have, the more touch points they're back talking to you.
Commissioner Decker, you come?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to, obviously, due to my employment, I'm going to resign. I do want to say, however, this is a very good. Oh, geez.
Second.
Sorry, abstain. I don't know what I was thinking.
Newsflash. Did you get that, Scott?
I think it's all over newspapers by now. Scott's quickly typing on his phone. Okay, I am going to abstain on this. But having said that, this is an item that, there are some people that this is like their only medical interaction every year. And it's important, it's very important, that it is a very good service that they provide, and I'm very happy that it's going to continue.
I think it's an excellent program myself, and it benefits not just the employees, but the city as well. So a very proactive approach, and I think it's very successful.
And Teresa Durham does a great job with this.
Yes,
so
she
we'll
does.
give her add a girl. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Abstain.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
I have 3 ayes and 1 abstention, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. And
That's
thank
all,
you,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Jeffers. Commissioner Call.
One item this evening, sir. Mr. Mayor, I move you that ordinance number 4380, hereto attached, an ordinance amending the residency provisions of the City of East Peoria Personnel Policy Manual, be read at length by the clerk, and that said ordinance 4380 be accepted on its first reading and be hereby adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Morgan?
Whereas the City of East Peoria established its personnel policy manual by ordinance number 2474 in November 1990, which has been subsequently amended and updated by various ordinances, including a significant revision and reissuance in July 2014 by ordinance number 4173. Whereas city officials have recently reviewed the city's residency policy with regard to residency requirements for certain director and department head positions, whereas city officials have determined that the permissible area for the residency policy can be extended on a limited basis without diminishing city readiness and services, and whereas the city council hereby finds that the adoption of the revised residency policy is provided herein is in the best interest of the city and its employees. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that Section 1, Section 2.7 of the city's personnel policy manual is hereby amended as follows. Additions are indicated by underline, deletions by strikeout. Section 2.7 Residency Requirement. To foster community involvement in the employment of its citizens, the city will give consideration to city residences for employment within the city where other factors are equal. Individuals holding specified city positions who are not residents of the city at the time of employment shall move to the city and establish residence as soon as practicable following employment and shall become and thereafter remain city residents during the continuation of their employment and within 12 months after the commencement of employment. For those certain employees other than those in fire and police services residing in the city on May 19, 1991, the employee shall maintain residence within the city so long as the employee remains employed by the city as a condition of continued employment. For the purposes of this section, city residency means residency within the city corporate limits or outside the city, but within 1 1/2 miles of the city corporate limits in an unincorporated area. This residency requirement shall apply to the following specific city positions: police chief, fire chief, city administrator, city clerk, director of public works, director of planning and community development, and director of tourism and special events and facilities. Employees subject to this requirement who fail to comply with this requirement after receiving written notice of their noncompliance from the city may be terminated from employment. If an employee does not become a city resident within 9 months after commencing employment with the city will provide written notice to the employee that the employee must become a resident by the employee's 12-month anniversary date. In any case, the employee will have no less than 90 days to comply with this requirement after receiving written notice of noncompliance. For other city employees, as a condition of employment, the employee shall maintain residence within 20 miles of the city limits while employed by the city. All city employees are urged to become involved in civic programs within the city for the betterment of the community. Section 2, this ordinance is hereby ordered to be published in pamphlet form by the city clerk. Said clerk is ordered to keep at least 3 copies hereof available for public inspection in the future in accordance with the Illinois Municipal Code. Section 3, this ordinance is in addition to all other ordinances on the subject and shall be construed therewith, except to the as part of direct conflict with any other ordinance. In the event of such conflict, the provisions hereof shall govern. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and 10-day period of publication in the manner provided by law. Section 5, the city's human resources director is directed to furnish a copy of these changes to the personnel policy manual to all city employees when future updates are provided to city employees.
Yeah, sorry about that, Maureen. Part of the job, I guess. I'm going to defer this over to Mr. Eder in a second, but just a couple of quick comments. This has actually been a discussion that's been ongoing, quite honestly, for probably well over a year or nearly a year on trying to find a happy medium. And Mr. Eder came back and looked at some state statutes, and I don't want to misspeak, but basically is what we're doing here is using what they utilize by the state for planning purposes.
That's correct. We did look at a number of different ways on how to do this over the last probably close to a year now. And then one day it just hit me, why don't we use our planning jurisdiction, which is 1.5 miles outside of our city boundaries, as long as it's not in another municipality. So that is, and that's legally defined by the state of Illinois. Any project within 1.5 miles out in the county must notify us as part of that. When we do our comprehensive planning, we look at that growth ring, so to speak, as part of that. So I propose that is the solution to the discussion, and it seems to where council directed me to go from that point on. So
thank you, Jeff.
Other discussion, please?
I'd like to say, Mayor, this is something that I'm going to support. The only thing I wish it would have come up a little earlier. I mean, Dennis is sitting there. I wish it would have, we would have gotten this done before, so at least to give him the option of living there. And I know there was a house that Jeff was actually looking at that was on Bloomington Road. For the people that are wondering about this, these are areas that are actually in the middle of our city. I mean, there are parts of Bloomington Road that are technically county, but they have, East Peoria, for instance, fire ambulance services that assist them. So it is areas that are in the city. These places are closer to the heart of the city than many places that are maybe out by Route 24. So it's something I'm going to support. I wish it would have come sooner, so the option would have been available to a couple others. But I guess you have to pick a point at some point.
Mr. Jeffers, please.
I understand, and we have discussed this for some time. Actually, the whole residency issue's gone back 10 years, 15 years longer. And I know over time, in my time here, we've went from residency for all employees to the way it is now, where we, I think for any employee not covered by this, it's 20 miles. Is that correct from the city limits?
Yes, unless something's different in any one of our union agreements, which I believe are all at 20 miles.
So it's 20 miles. So, that's where we're at, except for these defined positions. My real disagreement with this, maybe it's an opinion. I don't think it's something to go to the wall on. However, we have different management people within the city, and we have staff, different levels, and I guess I'm not sure, and this is not, if we take the names out of this, as far as this is just the position, but I don't know, we have superintendents in Public Works that are not covered by this, and they manage staff, or they manage employees. And anyway, it doesn't seem, I guess I don't understand maybe why tourism is in this, or planning and community development, that those positions are here. You got to make the call where you got to cut it off at. Again, we've done away with residency in so many employees, and maybe this is the best way what's being proposed. I just don't feel comfortable with this. Wanting to get this right this time, because I think this needs to be the last time we mess with this I say mess, the last time we need to address it. It makes it more black and white. We already have the most non-management employees are covered by the 20-mile agreement, and that's going to work for us. So that's my only comment about that. That's a
What would your
preference.
recommendation be, just out of curiosity?
I would, well, police, fire, obviously, and public works directors, and then Mr. Eder, our city administrator, and then I guess we could throw Morgan in, our city clerk, and that would be it. That would be
Within the mile and a half?
within the mile and a half. That's really what I would have, in giving it some thought. In some cities, city clerk's elected, ours is not, but that would be my.
Can we revisit? I mean, honestly, I don't have a problem with your recommendation. I mean,
I
it's something.
I guess just to put names to it, that would take the response. They're already in East Peoria, to Ty and Doug. But I don't want to be the one that would say that's the way we got to do it.
There's no right answer to this, and all I was trying to do was put forward what I heard had the votes to pass, so that's why I wrote it this way. If you guys want to change it, that's fine with me.
So does the council want to vote on this, or is there going to be a motion to table this?
Well, I think John wanted to get it one reading, didn't you?
It didn't matter to me. I mean, that's just the way these are done in one reading.
And
So
I'm okay with that. I mean, look, it's
I don't
something
think
we.
it's going to, I think it's going to be something we'll look at in the future, and we should, honestly.
Well, and we can, but if we can get it tonight, that's fine. But it isn't all just about me. But I really think that we don't need to be as inclusive with those two positions. I view them a little differently, not that their position's less important, because we have other people in the city, the whole staff. It's not a question of salary, because that varies too.
Second on that.
what's that?
Do we have a second on that?
Dan.
Yes. Dan seconded.
You know, honestly, I'm going to let these gentlemen talk, but I'm not opposed to bringing it back at the next council meeting if we want to revisit it in the meantime.
I'm not going to vote on something that's spontaneous tonight, but to come back with it would certainly be agreeable. So we need a motion to table that, Dennis?
If somebody wants to make a motion, there's a second, you can vote to table it.
If that's, somebody wants to make that.
Dan, are you comfortable with that?
I'm okay voting on it. If it's tabled, it's fine with me too. The only thing is, my only thought is just because I believe in the city, I wouldn't want to expand the distance. So that's my only thing. But if that's the will of what you guys want to do, I'm okay with tabling it. I'm okay with voting on it the way it is too as well.
I would make that motion that we could table it. In 2 weeks, we can make a final decision on it. It may be the way it is now, or what I would like to see would be with the exclusion of tourism and planning and community development, that those two would be given the 20-mile radius versus, or not radius, 20 mile from the city versus the mile and a half boundary, which we're making now for the chiefs.
You're saying the clerk?
We can discuss that.
Personally, I think it's worthy of further discussion,
Make a
honestly.
second, then, John.
Second.
I know where we're headed.
Yeah, we'll table it. You made the motion to table.
Roll call?
I seconded it.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye.
Very good.
That's all I had, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience want to speak to the council on a non-agenda item, please come forward.
Just kind of wanted to follow up. Today, I see that Illinois ended up in the third position for the highest property taxes in the U.S. Only two states beat us out. So you were talking about property taxes being held to 97 levels. It's true for the city. And the Fond du Lac Township, it might have gone down even, but the rest of it's increased greatly. And like I said, right now, we're, third highest state in the union for property taxes. 2007, I believe that's when you guys were seated. Steve Fergus, I ran across an article, Steve Fergus was wanting a whole bunch of money for roads back there because they were in terrible shape. Here we are 11 years later, and what are we talking about? The roads are in terrible shape. So nothing's changed in 11 years. Tim talked about $8 million coming off in, 10 years? So, given an inflation rate of 2.5% over 10 years, our budget's going to grow from $54 million to $71 million. So I don't know what good that $8 million is going to do in 10 years because we're already spending it. And as far as the reserves, the way I understand that they're operating is the $4 million is only general fund reserves. It really doesn't cover the 3 months' expenses for the city's $54 million budget. That should be about $13 million total reserves. So I don't think we covered things very well. That $4 million, like I said, it's just a small piece of the operating budget. It doesn't cover all the reserves that are necessary for a city to operate in case of an emergency for all departments. So
I would say that the water wastewater fund does have reserves as far as that enterprise fund. So that's.
And if there's a small amount of reserves in there, once again, that adds to a total of the $13 million that truly should be the 3 months worth of operating expenses for the city. So, but the $4 million is just a small piece of the general fund. So it's truly not a true picture of the whole thing. So I just thought I'd bring those points up.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you for your time.
Anybody else? Seeing no one else come forward, comments from the council?
One thing I'll say, Mayor, is when he mentions nothing's changed in 11 years, actually, we did have a big change. We did quite a few, we had quite a few really productive years. And Pat's sitting back there, he can show you the charts that will show how our streets did improve quite a bit over those first 5 years or so. With the downturn in the economy, unfortunately, it started to go back the other way, which is proof that we need to spend more money in streets. Because when we were spending an appropriate amount of money, we were making improvements. So it makes me even happier about what we did tonight because once again, we can get back to spending the needed money on streets. That's all I have, Mayor. I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Spring break is next week.
Hard to believe. Commissioner Jeffers, please.
I'm very pleased with the vote we had tonight on the sales tax revenue. I made comments tonight as well as a few weeks ago, a few months ago, and that's okay. I think this does give us some certainty of where we're headed the next in the near term with our budgets as we look at departments. We also know where we still have the holes to fill between now and forever. But I'm very pleased with it, and our department will be, especially Public Works and the others, I know will all be as good a stewards as possible to take the money and make it go as far and be as proactive in it to make it very productive for us and save us money. We are entering into the holy season, which I know many of our residents, probably majority, celebrate in one way or another, Passover, Easter, et cetera. And I look forward to this time, too. I know Christmas is always sort of the holiday season, the winter holiday season, Christmas, et cetera, is always a big one, of course, but I really appreciate this time of year. So enjoy it if you can. Kids, I know, like the week off from school and other people for their break, but enjoy it, and we'll keep the lights on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Call.
Just get some quick business out of the way as far as open burning. I was kind of surprised Mr. Norris didn't bring it up, so I will. Open burning is allowed for those that are burning now. You're in violation clearly unless you have a permit, which costs you $25 in the process. Nonetheless, open burning is allowed in the city of East Peoria between April 1st and April 30th. And I commend the chief. He tweaked some verbiage this year just to ask residents to check with your neighbors prior to burning. Just make sure there's not a health hazard. That way it gives some ample opportunity to set up some type of appropriate time where burning can be arranged and it doesn't affect people. I think that's a good ask. Quite honestly, I don't think it's that difficult to do. I wish people were more respectful in that regards. Unfortunately, they're not. But burning only occurs during daylight hours, not when I'm taking my dog out at 10 o'clock at night and the whole neighborhood is full of smoke. It's during daylight hours. It's got to be supervised at all times by a responsible adult and completely extinguished when finished with the water source nearby. My ask is if you're not sure what the ordinance reads, go to www.cityofeastpeoria.com and look it up. You don't want to get a visit from somebody because that usually will end up in a fine. So that's all I have to say about that. More importantly, today was election day, primary election, and most people, sadly enough, don't vote. So as a combat veteran, I urge people, please exercise your civic duty. Silence is consent. You don't vote, don't complain. That's all I have to say, sir.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn until Tuesday evening, April 3rd, 2018 at 6 p.m.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Call, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your
We
Honor.
are adjourned. It was hard to believe in April.